wants to pursue privatisation and the free market.
The strong showing of Klaus and his party means there'll be no turning back on reform. Privatisation and the pell-mell rush to the free market will continue, probably even accelerate. That, of course, will enrage his enemies in Slovakia.
Slovakia's election victor Vladimir Mečiar vehemently opposes the pace of reform. Slovak sovereignty, with a separate Slovak constitution, he announced today, could be declared within 2 months. A referendum on Slovakia's relations with the Czech lands will follow. Sovereignty has become a synonym for resentment and economic neglect. Oft quoted is Slovakia's unemployment rate 3 times that of the Czechs. But the Czechs regard a split as a looming tragedy.
For us, definitely, we consider it a tragedy and we are doing our best not to allow that outcome to happen.
But even the living symbol of Czechoslovak unity, playwright-president Václav Havel, has come under attack. Mečiar says he'll oppose Havel's re-election as president. Havel has threatened to withdraw his nomination.
Ďalšia skutočnosť, ktorá vyšla z volieb, bolo rozsiahle, rýchle, ktorí nám dali dôveru, podporovali nás po dobu viac ako rok a táto dôvera držala.
Us, definitely, we consider it a tragedy and we are doing our best not to allow that outcome to happen.
This is the primary audio circuit from Viz News, London. This is the primary audio circuit from Viz News, London. This is the primary audio circuit from Viz News.
The marriage is stone dead. I think that Diana has done what she's done in the hopes that the British public will understand that she lives a sham.
The state of the marriage collapsed so quickly and deeply, so soon after the wedding, that in the early 80s, on 5 separate occasions, Diana made 5 suicide bids.
These are but a few of the dramatic revelations unfolding before the eyes of the British public and of the world in the real-life soap opera that is the royal family. In the past week, British tabloids have been trying to outdo each other in an orgy of allegations and speculation about the marriage of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Much of the material is contained in 2 new books on the princess. The first, by Andrew Morton, entitled Diana, Her True Story, is due out next week and is being serialised in the Sunday Times. The paper's editor, Andrew Neil, spoke to Sky News about the book's most sensational allegation, that Diana tried to kill herself 5 times, once at Sandringham, during the darkest days of her marriage.
There was a huge fight between her and Charles, and it ended with him at the bottom of the stairs, she was at the top, and she shouted at him, "I'm going to kill myself." He didn't believe her and walked away, and she hurled herself down the stairs to be discovered by the Queen Mother.
In another alleged suicide attempt in 1986, Diana took an overdose of paracetamol pills at Kensington Palace after a flaming row with her husband. The book features dozens of never-before published photographs of the princess and several in-depth interviews with her closest friends, who say Diana sanctioned their comments because she wanted her unhappiness revealed in public.
She felt in the aftermath of her marriage that it was so difficult adjusting to the huge demands of royalty, being the most famous woman in the world, and she needed help, and she got none. She feels that she got none from her husband or from the royal family firm itself, and things were getting worse and worse, and she was crying out for help, and this was a way of trying to bring attention to her plight.
A second book by former Daily Mail journalist Nicholas Davies details Diana's battle with the slimming disease bulimia. Extracts from the book appear in the Daily Mail, which also reports that Princess Diana and the Duchess of York planned to divorce their husbands together, but that Diana pulled out at the last moment for the sake of her sons. The paper's royal reporter, Nigel Dempster, told Sky News the princess very definitely points the finger of blame at her husband.
I think she's exasperated that Prince Charles has got away with it, so to speak, so long. In the Andrew Morton book, Prince Charles is painted very much as the villain of the piece. She believes that she has done everything she can to live a happy life, to produce children, to produce an heir to the throne, and to produce a younger son as well. She feels that she has taken a lot of flack in the past, and that people should realise that it's Charles who has contributed to the breakdown of the marriage. I think this is a form of expression after years of rumours that things aren't going well, and that she's finally decided that she should come out and say via other people, it's not my fault, I would have loved the marriage to work, I would have loved him forever and ever and ever, but he left me.
Andrew Morton's book claims a major factor in Diana's deterioration was the continuing friendship between Prince Charles and a cavalry officer's wife, Camilla Parker Bowles, at 43, the same age as the prince, and his closest confidant. It's said she helped him choose Diana for his wife, and has acted as his hostess at dinner parties when Diana is away. Once, after a particularly heated argument, the princess is alleged to have asked Charles, "Did you ever love me?" His reply, "No." Diana's friends say she's now accepted that she will never be queen.
The path is being very much paved now, smooth, for the succession to go straight from the Queen to Prince William, so that for a young Britain in the 21st century we'll have a young king. I think that what we're seeing now are the first steps to ease Charles out of succession to the throne. Constitutionally very difficult, but obviously it can be done.
The longer-term problem is that Diana is the latest commoner to join the royal family that hasn't worked. And indeed, there's a string of failures. The royal family used to marry other royals. There are very few royals now to marry. And they brought in commoners in the 20th century, and almost everyone has failed. And this comes out very strongly in the book, that Diana felt that the royal family does not appreciate the difficulties of moving from being a commoner to a royal, even if you're a very posh commoner like Princess Diana is. And the problem for why this is of constitutional importance is that if the House of Windsor has run out of royals to marry, but if bringing commoners in clearly doesn't work and results in the kind of stories that we've seen over the past month or so, then where does it go from here?
The news of this latest and most serious royal crisis has prompted angry outbursts from British politicians who say the royal family should be left alone to sort out its problems in private. But what does the general public think?
They are human, like everybody else. And if they have personal problems, why should everybody zoom in on that?
They're public figures, and therefore, I'm afraid, inevitably, their personal and private lives are going to be brought out in public, hung out like the washing.
Well, I think the English should know what's going on, sort of thing. Should be kept in the dark.
We're not gaining anything by smashing it all round and making it worse.
They're taking the thing wholly out of context. They should leave the poor bastards alone, if I may use an Australian expression.
While Buckingham Palace won't confirm or deny the allegations, its official comment is Princess Diana did not participate in any way with either book. In their defence, the Sunday Times and Daily Mail say, "Don't shoot the messenger."
The message in the book is too powerful, and in some ways the messenger is irrelevant.
The point is the royal family are a soap opera, but they're so far above Dynasty and Dallas because they're real and they've got history and they live in grand places and they really do own things like Sandringham and Balmoral. And I think that it is not so much envy but interest in What's really happening behind those gilded cages? What's going on behind those thick walls?
This is the primary audio system.
Today, ASN brings you 3 episodes of fun and misadventure with John Cleese and Prunella Scales at the craziest British hotel ever. We welcome you to Faulty Towers.
Paul arrives with a brand new riff, the way he always does. Tom arrives with a brand new personal manager, the way he always does. And Donna makes it all sound sweet, the way she always does. It's Wednesday night band practice, and nothing's changed except your beer. Moosehead Premium Dry. What beer is now?
Get up. Get moving. Keep moving. And don't stop till you get to your participating Toyota dealer. Now, during Toyota's Super Summer Dealing Days. Super deals on Corolla LSX Select with no charge air conditioning. On Tercel, most value for the money. On tough Toyota trucks. Super deals on every new car and truck. But hurry, Toyota's Super Summer Dealing Days end Tuesday, June 30th. For details, drop into your Toyota dealer now.
It's Beaver Lumber's birthday bonanza sale, celebrating our lowest price guarantee. We're giving away thousands of Beaver bucks, plus you could win a national grand prize of a Beaver Harrogate home package.
This Northwind ceiling fan comes complete with a decorative 4-light kit. Choose from black or white finish. This sturdy tradesman toolbox has a lifetime warranty, only $12.99. Get a handy tradesman ratchet screwdriver or socket set, your choice, just $9.99.
Low prices and the right advice. Beaver Lumber, cutting the cost of home improvement.
I want to tell you about a radio station that believes while a lot of good songs come from the 60s and 70s, a lot come from the 80s and today. It's 92 CJCH, all new music either. They play a variety of songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and today. And 92 CJCH is the only station that does it.
Ever feel too clumsy when you wake up to make a pot of coffee? There's a better way to wake up. Maxwell House filter packets. No fumbling, no bumbling. It's never been easier to brew a rich, perfect pot of Maxwell House coffee every time. Maxwell House filter packets, in regular and naturally decaffeinated. Only from Maxwell House. Perfect coffee every time.
Be aware of the following telltale signs. The occurrence of strange sounds, twitchy feet, and rhythmic swaying of the back and the neck. After recognizing these signs, apply a cold sensation to your hands. Go moose sliding. Let's go moose sliding! Come on! Let's go moose sliding!
Let's leave a legacy that future generations can grow on. ASN urges you to help save our planet.
So we decided to hit the road. Kind of a Jack Kerouac thing. Didn't know where we were going or when we'd get there, but we were ready.
Just let it cool down for a bit.
So where are we gonna stay tonight?
Yeah, who's this Jack Kerouac?
We're lost.
Good times are all about.
You know, I didn't exactly come up with this recipe overnight.
When the moon hits your eye like
We tried a few different kinds of pepperoni
amore.
and some different blends of cheese. It's not a great pizza until you bake it right. Now, some.
Get up. Get moving. keep moving. And don't stop till you get to your participating Toyota dealer. Now, during Toyota's Super Summer Dealing Days. Super deals on Camry, voted Best Import Family Sedan. On Celica, the aerodynamic sports machine. On Previa, winner of the Great Minivan Comparison. Super deals on every new car and truck. But hurry, Toyota's Super Summer Dealing Days end Tuesday, June 30th. For details, drop into your Toyota dealer now.
Attention itchy, watery, puffy eyes. Attention runny noses. Attention sneezing noses. It's Seldane time again. For millions of allergy sufferers, Seldane takes away your itchy, watery eyes. Takes away your runny nose. Takes away the sneezing. And it does it all fast, without drowsiness. So attention allergy sufferers, it's Seldane time again.
This is Jay. Jay doesn't say much when he's enjoying his McCain Super Fries. And he doesn't seem to care that Super Fries are cholesterol-free and low in saturated fats. McCain Super Fries, deep-fried flavor and crispness from your oven. For the strong, silent type.
Be aware of the following telltale signs. The occurrence of strange sounds, twitchy feet, and rhythmic swaying of the back and the neck. After recognizing these signs, apply a cold sensation to your hands. Go move sliding.
Let's go move sliding. Come on, let's go move sliding.
What do you want? I want him, Gordon Call. Thought I told you. You better back off.
Manhunt in the Dakotas.
We really had to cool down the brewery to bring you this one. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer. It's got a different taste, a fresher taste, because it's made a different way. Cold. It's filtered, aged, and bottled at 0 degrees for a crisp, clean, fresher taste that's genuinely more refreshing. So next time you feel like a cold one, go for the cold. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer.
This week at Sears, you'll find Canadian-made resin folding chairs for just $14.99. They're light, they're strong, and you can take them anywhere.
There's one cake so good, it will keep you coming back for more. McCain Deep and Delicious Cakes, sealed with a see-through dome to keep in all that rich, moist, deliciously fresh taste. So, you can raid the cake tray, seal up the rest, and put it back in the freezer. Till you're ready for the very next craving. And now for people who fantasize about chocolate, Deep and Delicious Chocolate Deluxe from McCain.
It's Beaver Lumber's birthday bonanza sale, celebrating our lowest price guarantee. We're giving away thousands of Beaver Bucks, plus you can win a national grand prize of a Beaver Harrogate home package.
This Northwind ceiling fan comes complete with a decorative 4-light kit. Choose from black or white finish. This sturdy tradesman toolbox has a lifetime warranty, only $12.99. Get a handy tradesman ratchet screwdriver or socket set, your choice, just $9.99.
Low prices and the right advice. Beaver Lumber, cutting the cost of home improvement.
Who can you count on to help make your family budget go further? Count on Chrysler. With Dodge Spirit and Plymouth Acclaim, you get a 6-passenger family sedan equipped the way you like it. With air conditioning, automatic transmission, stereo, and a whole lot more. Now, for a limited time, all for $12,999, including $1,250 cash back. Or choose factory financing over 48 months. Go ahead, dare to compare Spirit Acclaim to Corsica and Grand Am. Advantage, Chrysler.
Be aware of the following telltale signs. The occurrence of strange sounds, twitchy feet, and rhythmic swaying of the back and the neck. After recognizing these signs, apply a cold sensation to your hands. Go move sliding.
Let's go move sliding. Come on, let's go move sliding.
This week at Sears, you'll find Canadian-made resin folding chairs for just $14.99. They're light, they're strong, and you can take them anywhere.
Good afternoon. Officials from the Nova Scotia Liberal Party and MT&T are meeting today to try and figure out what went wrong with the phones at this weekend's leadership convention. An experiment allowing each party member to phone in their vote from anywhere in the province collapsed in a heap of technical problems when the 1-900 system crashed. The campaign has been suspended for a few days while organizers try to sort things out. But at least one candidate in the cancelled Liberal leadership vote wants an entirely new campaign call. Ken McGinnis says the broadcast of a taped phone call giving partial results renders the entire weekend invalid. The strike by thousands of public servants in New Brunswick is over, save for a couple of die-hard picketers in St. John. 2 workers remain on the line outside of the Centracare facility, vowing to stay until the dispute is resolved. Other CUPE members have agreed to abide by a back-to-work order issued by a labor tribunal and have accepted the offer of a mediator. The extradition hearing of a Spanish man accused of cocaine smuggling has been adjourned again. This morning, Francisco Torres was brought to a Halifax courtroom under heavy RCMP security. Scottish authorities want Torres to stand trial there on allegations he helped smuggle $250 million of cocaine into the country in 1990. He was arrested last October when his ship came into Halifax with mechanical problems. Today, Torres' lawyers asked for an adjournment to give them time to interview a key witness in Scotland. Judge Hughes Randall reluctantly agreed and adjourned the matter until Thursday. Torres remains in custody. And if your car is stolen, federal figures suggest this afternoon that the odds of getting it back are less than they were in 1980, but the odds of your car being ripped off are about the same. Over the next 24 hours, all of the area can expect some showers or periods of rain and possibly, in some communities, a few thunder showers. The week will be rather unsettled in regards to the weather, although temperatures will be near the seasonal normal. Join us for all the day's news, weather, and sports later tonight on Atlantic Pulse 7.
So we decided to hit the road. Kind of a Jack Kerouac thing. Didn't know where we were going or when we'd get there, but we were ready.
Just let it cool down for a bit.
So where are we gonna stay tonight?
Yeah, who's this Jack Kerouac?
We're lost.
Good times are all about.
Is entering another person's dream possible?
I mean, these are the guys even the CIA are afraid of. What, you mean he's training me to be some kind of a spy? No, he wants more than spies, Alex. He wants assassins.
Turning nightmares into silent killers. Dennis Quaid in Dreamscape, Tuesday at 8.
You are a freak, Jessup!
A scientist alters his consciousness,
I want this thing stopped!
temporarily changing his appearance.
This guy is a gorilla.
William Hurt in Altered States, Tuesday at midnight.
I am in the business of putting old heads on young shoulders, and all my pupils are the creme de la creme.
The Crime of Miss Jean Brodie, Thursday at 11.
So we decided to hit the road. Kind of a Jack Kerouac thing. Didn't know where we were going or when we'd get there, but we were ready.
Just let it cool down for a bit.
So where are we gonna stay tonight?
Yeah, who's this Jack Kerouac?
We're lost.
Good times are all about.
Get up. Get moving. Keep moving. And don't stop till you get to your participating Toyota dealer. Now, during Toyota's Super Summer Dealing Days. Super deals on Tercel, most value for the money. On Paseo, voted best in Ford EconoSport. On the rugged 4Runner, tell the road where to go. Super deals on every new car and truck. But hurry, Toyota's Super Summer Dealing Days end Tuesday, June 30th. For details, drop into your Toyota dealer now.
Okay, I made you a sandwich with regular Kraft single slices, and I'm gonna try these Kraft singles light slices. Uh-oh.
What's wrong?
This one can't be mine. You must have my Kraft singles light. Sorry.
Kraft Singles Light, the cheese product with 30% less fat.
Is this a light or is this a light? Which one is the light?
Kraft Singles Light. Only Kraft Light as Kraft taste.
Catch the Olympic spirit with Kraft.
The pasta.
They loved it.
The sauces.
Great.
The cooking.
So easy.
Introducing Pasta Magic from McCain, a brand new way to serve up the kinds of great-tasting pasta and delicious sauces your family loves in less than 3 minutes.
Fettuccine.
Alfredo.
Pasta salad.
My next topping.
New Pasta Magic from McCain, the kinds of delicious pasta and sauces you love in less than 3 minutes.
It's magic.
It's McCain.
This is an ordinary run-of-the-mill exhaust pipe, and this is a Midas Long Life exhaust pipe. It's aluminized, and for about the same price, it lasts twice as long as ordinary pipe. And for most cars, only Midas makes it.
When the heat is on, go for the cold. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer. It's filtered, aged, and bottled at 0 degrees for a fresher, cleaner taste that's genuinely more refreshing. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer for a fresher taste. Go for the cold.
This man has woman troubles.
I want you more than I ever wanted any other man.
And so does his wife.
I'm really a very jealous woman.
Let the games begin. Gene Wilder in Woman in Red, Friday.
We really had to cool down the brewery to bring you this one. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer. It's got a different taste, a fresher taste, because it's made a different way. Cold. It's filtered, aged, and bottled at 0 degrees for a crisp, clean, fresher taste that's genuinely more refreshing. So next time you feel like a cold one, go for the cold. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer.
There's one thing you should know about the rest of the pack in the Hyundai Elantra's class of cars. They can't keep up in Hyundai's Smart Money Marathon. Now at just $9,995 with no charge automatic, Elantra is definitely a winner. A limited time offer at your Atlantic Hyundai dealers. There is one thing you should know about the other competitors in the Hyundai Sonata's class of cars. They can't keep up in Hyundai's Smart Money Marathon. Now at just $10,995, Sonata will put you in a class by yourself. A limited time offer at your Atlantic Hyundai dealers.
The sea is beckoning to me, saying, come, my son, I'll show you things you've never seen before. I'll set your spirit free on the winds of history. Hoist your sails and chart your course beyond the mainland shore. Oh, the rolling of the sea is beckoning to me. Discover Newfoundland and Labrador.
You can enjoy the world of beauty, excitement, and adventure. All these and more can be yours in the wonderful world of art. And with this art test from Art Instruction Schools, you can find out if you have the interest and desire needed to become a serious art student. So to get your free art test without cost or obligation, call this toll-free number now. Call 1-800-327-0900. That's 1-800-327-0900.
Are you playing scratch and win lottery again?
This here new game's in, and I know I'm due.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds.
We won!
Because you're mine.
Earl, you got that 20 on me?
I walk the line.
We've got lots of great new games you'll really enjoy playing and winning. Scratch and win lottery. It's fun to be lucky.
Be aware of the following telltale signs. The occurrence of strange sounds, twitchy feet, and rhythmic swaying of the back and the neck. After recognizing these signs, apply a cold sensation to your hands. Go moose sliding.
Let's go sliding. Oh, let's go sliding.
Men's Bahama knit shirts are available at Sears in a variety of patterns, just $14.99 to $16.99, 1/3 off the regular price. You know, it's probably a good thing these guys aren't depending on a modeling career.
Introducing Luster 7, a concentrated polymer solution. Apply a few dabs with a damp cloth. It's so easy to have a gorgeous luster finish in 30 minutes that lasts a year. We burned lighter fluid to prove Luster 7's protective strength. It protects against ultraviolet rays, salt, ice, snow, and all weather conditions. Look, burn marks just wipe away. This is acid eating through a piece of metal. Luster 7 contains Teflon. Look, the acid does not harm the finish. Watch this demonstration with tar, which is difficult to clean. Luster 7 removes the tar, rust, and insects in only seconds. Cleans and polishes your chrome so fast and so easy. After 50 washes, the Luster 7 finish still beads and shines. Luster 7 contains Teflon and UV protector. It cleans, polishes, protects, and preserves. Best of all, it's easy on and easy off. A luster finish that lasts a year. Luster 7, $12.95 from K-Tel.
Available at Sears, Zellers, Wilco Woolworth, Kmart, participating Canadian Tire, Beaver Lumber, Home Hardware, and Co-op stores.
Be aware of the following telltale signs. The occurrence of strange sounds, twitchy feet, and rhythmic swaying of the back and the neck. After recognizing these signs, apply a cold sensation to your hands. Go moose sliding.
Let's go moose sliding. Come on. Let's go moose sliding.
Maybe the way it looks makes Tercel your pride and joy. Maybe its performance makes Tercel your pride and joy. Maybe how it passes fuel stops makes it your pride and joy. Maybe it's how others see you in it makes Tercel your pride and joy. But maybe, just maybe, pride has nothing to do with your joy. Toyota Tercel, the promise of something better.
It's Beaver Lumber's birthday bonanza sale, celebrating our lowest price guarantee. We're giving away thousands of beaver bucks, plus you could win a national grand prize of a Beaver Harrogate home package.
Whatever the age or style of your home, Esclad vinyl siding will enhance its beauty and add to its value. Esclad siding is virtually maintenance-free and comes with a lifetime warranty. Choose from 7 distinctive styles and 11 radiant colors. Esclad, your first choice in siding.
Low prices and the right advice. Beaver Lumber, cutting the cost of home improvement.
This week, Sears has Weather Meter Plus exterior paint and stay on sale for up to 50% off the regular price. It goes on easily and dries quickly. Not that quickly.
When the heat is on, go for the cold. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer. It's filtered, aged, and bottled at 0 degrees for a fresher, cleaner taste that's genuinely more refreshing. Alpine Genuine Cold Filtered Beer for a fresher taste. Go for the cold.
This week at Sears, you'll find Canadian-made resin folding chairs for just $14.99. They're light, they're strong, and you can take them anywhere.
Elaine, aren't you playing Lotto 649?
I only play on Saturdays.
What if your numbers get picked on Wednesday?
Well, if they won, I'd go to Europe. I love fancy restaurants. Exotic cooking is so different. But first, I'd take everyone to go see the king of rock and roll.
Elaine!
The king says I better play my numbers.
Lotto 649. Everybody's got a dream.
Can West brings you the same great taste with a fresh new look. Harvest Time. Surprise friends or family with a nutritious soup made with green or yellow split peas, barley, or lentils. Harvest Time, brought to your favorite grocery store by Creighton's Limited. Harvest Time, an abundance of wholesome goodness. Pot or pearl barley, large or baby lima beans, lentils, green or yellow whole or split peas, pinto beans, chickpeas, black or red beans. Harvest Time, brought to you by Creighton's Limited.
I want to tell you about a radio station that believes while a lot of good songs come from the 60s and 70s, a lot come from the 80s and today, too. It's 92 CJCH, and they believe that playing songs from all these different years gives you the variety that's so important. So 92 CJCH doesn't just play old songs, and they don't play all new music either. They play a variety of songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and today. And 92 CJCH is the only station in Halifax that does it.
Be aware of the following telltale signs. the occurrence of strange sounds, twitchy feet, and rhythmic swaying of the back and the neck. After recognizing these signs, apply a cold sensation to your hands. Go moose sliding.
Let's go moose sliding. Come on, let's go moose sliding.
This week at Sears, you'll find Canadian-made resin folding chairs for just $14.99. They're light, they're strong, and you can take them anywhere.
This is Atlantic Calendar. The Bedford Institute of Oceanography is now offering guided tours of their facility during the summer months. School groups, organizations, and the public are invited to come and learn about the mysteries of the deep. Call 902-426-4093 for details. Play ball for St. Joseph's is scheduled in St. John, June 13th, and funds raised will be used to help purchase much-needed ultrasound equipment for diagnostic imaging. Please register your team by calling 506-632-5595 or just make a donation to this worthy cause. A slow pitch fundraiser will be held June 6th on Halifax Commons, followed by a dance at the Halifax Forum with tribute in aid of the Spina Bifida Association of Nova Scotia. Join the Eastern Pioneer Wagon Train June 12th through 14th in honor of Canada's 125th anniversary. It's open to all owners and riders of draft and saddle horses. Phone 506-756-2366. To include your event in Atlantic Calendar, please mail your information 3 weeks in advance to this address.
What do you want? I want him. Gordon Call. Thought I told you. You better back off.
Manhunt in the Dakotas.
Complaints Commission and the Archbishop of Canterbury condemn some newspaper reporting of the Prince and Princess of Wales' marriage. An odious exhibition of journalists dabbling their fingers in the stuff of other people's souls, says the Commission. And the government sets aside £2.5 million to help Maxwell pensioners, but many say it's not enough. Good evening. The Press Complaints Commission, the industry's watchdog, says the manner and tone of much of the reporting of the marriage of the Prince and Princess of Wales has, beyond doubt, been in breach of the newspaper code of practice, and in some cases, a return to the worst excesses of the 80s. The Heritage Secretary, David Mellor, welcomed the criticism and said he would take it into account in his review of press regulation later this month. Earlier, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, said the current speculation about intimate personal matters has exceeded the boundaries which should be observed in a society claiming to respect basic human values. Andrew Neil, editor of the Sunday Times, which is serializing some of the allegations, said the Archbishop should be counselling members of the royal family with marital difficulties rather than lecturing the press. This report from our media correspondent, Nick Hyam.
When this morning's newspapers hit the streets, the Press Complaints Commission decided the sheer quantity of speculation about the royal marriage meant it couldn't remain silent. Today, it reminded newspapers that they're still on probation. The Commission's been dismissed as out of touch, but its members include the editors of 2 tabloids, the News of the World and the Daily Star, and a former lady-in-waiting to Princess Margaret. Members, leaving after discussions lasting much of today, decided the tone of newspaper reporting was unacceptable. The Commission's chairman, Lord MacGregor, wouldn't say whether he'd talked to the palace, nor whether the tabloid editors among his members agreed with today's strongly worded statement, which didn't mince words about the coverage.
Is an odious exhibition of journalists dabbling their fingers in the stuff of other people's souls in a manner which adds nothing to the legitimate public interest in the situation of the heir to the throne. The Commission have been distressed by this reversion by some newspapers to the worst excesses of the 1980s and are bound to state publicly their view that the continuance of this type of journalism will threaten the future of self-regulation just at the time when it appears to be succeeding.
And the Commission joined the Archbishop of Canterbury in condemning what he called the unnecessary pain of the children of people targeted by the press. One editor who serves on the Commission believes the press coverage could damage the monarchy.
If you want the British monarchy to fail, if you want the Wales's marriage to come unstuck, then you don't care what you run in the papers. But if you want it to survive, then you think about the level of grief and pressure that this must create upon the Prince and Princess of Wales in this situation.
The editor of the Sunday Times dissociated himself from what he called the feeding frenzy of speculation by other newspapers, but defended his own decision to publish.
I have on-the-record support for what we claimed. And if you're telling me that I, as editor, having learned on the record that the Princess of Wales attempted to take her life by suicide, that I should then suppress that, then I think we go back to the days of the 1930s when the press was part of a cosy establishment club.
Over the weekend, the Prince and Princess were together in public at Prince William's School Sports, but left separately. The Commission says their behaviours put the state of their marriage in the public domain. But there have been renewed calls from MPs for laws to protect privacy, even that of public figures.
The fact of the matter is that there should be laws on privacy, whether it involves the royal family or the large majority of people. It doesn't really matter whether they're royal or otherwise. There should be a right to privacy unless it's in the public interest.
The Heritage Secretary, David Mellor, welcomed today's statement. He's due to decide next month whether the press is now well enough behaved to make a new privacy law unnecessary. Until this weekend, the Commission thought it was, but it's powerless to control newspapers if they choose to ignore today's warning. Now, it'll be for Mr. Mellor to weigh up whether the line between legitimate reporting and intrusive overkill needs to be redrawn, limiting press freedom in the process.
The government is to pay £2.5 million in emergency grants to help thousands of people whose pension funds were defrauded by the late Robert Maxwell. The Social Security Secretary, Peter Lilly, said the money would provide temporary funding while efforts continued to recover the assets still missing from the Maxwell companies.
Maxwell pensioners, many facing financial ruin, descended in Westminster this afternoon to lobby MPs to get compensation for the loss of their pensions in the Maxwell fraud. The response came from the Social Security Secretary, Peter Lilly. He's putting up £2.5 million of emergency grants from government to keep the pension funds going.
Rarely in the catalogue of crime has a fraud as callous and despicable as the pillaging of pension funds by Robert Maxwell. It raises two questions. First, how can we minimise the loss and anguish faced by the pensioners? Second, how can we ensure that such a crime never occurs?
But he added that since banks had profited from Maxwell in the boom days, he's also passing the hat round the city for voluntary contributions. But the opposition thought the government was not doing enough.
In essence, the statement tells us very few details, except that the rescue package of £2.5 million amounts to a derisory 0.5% of the stolen assets.
The pensioners, who had earlier presented a petition to the Prime Minister, had hoped for much more.
It really just did nothing at all to help the situation forward, other than this drip feeding, this temporary arrangement.
Altogether, it was discovered that nearly £700 million was missing from the pension funds of Maxwell's companies. Of that, about £230 million has been recovered by the liquidators. That still leaves £465 million missing, much of which has gone forever. But the liquidators believe that up to £100 million of it is held by banks in the form of shares as security for loans. Of this, about £30 million is with National Westminster, the rest with foreign banks. These figures make the government's rescue look tiny, but an MP who's been campaigning for the pensioners thinks it could work.
And I would have thought it's inconceivable that we, as a House of Commons, are going to allow people to have lost their pension or had it reduced, for the government to say it's going to be reinstated, only for the government to stand back and allow it to be snatched away again.
But the repercussions of the Maxwell scandal are far from over. Today, an official inquiry into his flotation of Daily Mirror shares last year was launched by the Department of Trade and Industry.
The government is to carry out an independent review of all occupational pension schemes to prevent a repeat of the Maxwell scandal. It's expected to look at ways to increase safeguards and improve the way pensions are regulated.
Many of the pension funds built up with the savings of British workers have accumulated immense wealth. British Coal is presently up for sale, complete with a pension fund worth more than £10 billion. Yet despite the value of UK pension funds, it's taken a major fraud to force the government to acknowledge the shortcomings of its regulation. Commenting on the Maxwell affair, the Common Social Security Committee concluded that Pontius Pilate would have blushed at so many witnesses washing their hands of responsibility. Sean Hand was legal advisor to the committee.
The government has had several warnings during the course of the 1980s about the unsatisfactory nature of trust law as the framework, and it hasn't really grasped the nettle. The scale of the theft of the pension funds by Robert Maxwell, I think, has now put that need very high on the political agenda.
The Department of Trade has control of fund managers who actually buy and sell shares in a pension fund through IMRO, the investment managers' regulatory organisation. In the Maxwell case, IMRO signally failed. But there's no supervising body for the trustees, whose job it is to safeguard the interests of pensioners. They're governed by laws that concentrate power in the hands of company executives. The trustees are appointed by company managers. The people they choose need no formal qualification, and there need be no worker representation. Yet the trustees can select or dismiss fund managers. It's a structure that's proved open to abuse by the fraudster.
There was too much power in Mr. Maxwell's hands, too much power for a man who was not honest. You can't run a legal system on the basis that the chap in charge is going to be honest.
Maxwell pensioners say the only good to come out of their plight may be better regulation of a vital industry. But the government's inquiry will take a year to complete, legislation will take longer. In the meantime, the framework which allowed Robert Maxwell to plunder hundreds of millions of pounds remains largely intact.
Serbian forces have renewed their offensive against the Bosnian capital Sarajevo, killing 25 people and wounding 200 more. In the heaviest fighting so far, missiles, artillery fire and mortars have set buildings alight and stopped ambulances reaching the wounded. The United Nations has said it plans to send 1,000 troops to secure Sarajevo's besieged airport so that medical supplies and aid can reach its 300,000 residents. Carol Walker reports.
For the first time, the mainly Muslim defense forces of Sarajevo launched a concerted offensive to try to break the Serbian siege of the city. It brought a ferocious response from Serbian tanks, artillery, mortars and rockets. The heaviest fighting since the war engulfed Sarajevo brought destruction to almost all parts of the city. The Presidency Building, Municipal Hall, railway station and primary school were all hit. Many homes and businesses were set ablaze. Casualties are high. Street battles and sniper fire meant ambulances and firemen were unable to operate. The Muslim-dominated defense force has been pinned down and outgunned by the Serbian irregulars in the surrounding hills. But they managed to seize some of the heavy weaponry abandoned when the federal army pulled out. And one report suggests they have taken one key Serbian position tonight. The United Nations is discussing a plan to deploy more than 1,000 peacekeeping troops to secure Sarajevo airport and reopen it for humanitarian supplies. But the supposed agreement, signed by all three warring factions to place the airport under UN control, requires a ceasefire if it is to have any chance of succeeding. And tonight that appears more remote than ever. Carol Walker, BBC News, Belgrade.
Britain's contribution to the United Nations peacekeeping force has arrived in the former Yugoslav Republic of Croatia. The 300-strong contingent of 24 Field Hospital Group with 100 vehicles landed at the Croatian port of Rijeka. It will provide medical cover for the 15,000 UN peacekeepers already stationed in Croatia. The British group will operate in areas where there are agreed ceasefires, though there are frequent violations. The former Cabinet Minister Kenneth Baker has asked the government to accept that there will have to be substantial changes before MPs accept the Maastricht Treaty. But the Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, told the Commons that renegotiation would lead the European community back into the maelstrom. Mr. Hurd was reporting to MPs on last week's meeting of EC foreign ministers, which considered the Danish referendum rejecting the Maastricht Agreement.
More than a few MPs would like the government to seize the opportunity to rip up the Maastricht Treaty and start again. But the Cabinet's tactics are based on time's healing powers. The bill to ratify the treaty will be delayed until the autumn. But the Foreign Secretary is determined to press ahead then. Labour think that's pointless.
The treaty cannot be operative unless all of the 12 ratify it, and when the Danish people have just voted not to ratify it.
On the Conservative benches, the die-hard doubters believe their time has come. They're forming a new group to pile on the pressure. But they're not the only ones who want a fresh start. MPs normally thought of as pro-European are joining in as well, even one who was in the cabinet when Maastricht was negotiated.
It was very much on the basis of a community of 12 and not of 11 plus 1, and that if he has difficulty with the word renegotiation, would he not accept that there would have to be substantial changes and modifications before this House could actually approve it?
It is vitally important in the coming months to reinterpret the treaty in a way which will give maximum emphasis to the kind of aims expressed by the excellent determination of our right honourable friend the Prime Minister, that this should be a treaty which reverses the move towards centralisation in the affairs of the community.
But the government believes that would open Pandora's box.
The centralising proposals, which we batted away, which we got rid of with great difficulty during the autumn-winter, would return. They would return. And instead of getting an agreement on the kind of Europe which my honourable learned friend would like, we would be back in the maelstrom.
Mr Major is determined that Britain should never again be seen by the rest of Europe as the awkward squad. So his government will do its utmost to breathe new life into the treaty. Ministers believe that way, if it does turn out to be dead after all, Mr Major will be in a prime position to put his stamp on its replacement.
Police hunting the killers of Special Constable Glenn Goodman have issued descriptions of two men they believe are Irish terrorists. The gunmen, both with Irish accents, opened fire after their red Ford Sierra was stopped by police on the A64 near Tadcaster early on Sunday morning.
The search of the Yorkshire countryside has been thorough and prolonged. Horses, dogs and armed police here circling a quarry. Police have answered every tip-off, every sighting of a stranger, looking in lanes and gardens for two men with soft Irish accents who are believed to know the area well. Tonight, explosives experts and an underwater search team were called to a site near the original shooting, giving rise to speculation that there could be an arms cache, but they found nothing. And as the hunt goes on, neighbours of the dead Special Constable Glenn Goodman have started a fund for his 10-month-old son.
This is a member of the public here, assisting the regular police doing his job. What happened here quite clearly was a completely callous and deliberate act committed by two men who really have no scruples whatsoever.
PC Sandy Kelly, shot in the same incident, is now off the danger list and in a stable condition in hospital. How close the killers came to killing two other officers who answered the appeal for help is shown by their car, covered with bullet holes. So who were the two men who left their Red Sierra registration C244 VPJ burning in a field, leaving two police officers for dead? Professional killers, certainly. Terrorists, probably. Although anti-terrorist officers don't believe they carried out the bomb attack on the festival hall in London on the same night. And early reports that the two men had tried to buy a car from this pub have also been discounted. The driver was about 28 and about 5'9". He had short, mousy hair and a moustache with round spectacles. He was wearing a blue and white hooped sweater, like a rugby sweater, and white trainers. The passenger was in his mid-40s, about 5'8" tall, with short grey hair, wearing a grey suit and blue tie. He was also wearing white trainers. There has recently been speculation that the IRA has used bases in Yorkshire to store arms and stage attacks in England. And the police are now investigating recent sightings of the suspect Ford Sierra. But the Assistant Chief Constable here emphasises not the terrorist, but the criminal nature of these events. It is, he says, an appalling series of crimes, beginning with the murder of a part-time policeman.
At the Earth Summit in Rio, Britain's Overseas Development Minister Baroness Chalker has warned of the dangers of allowing the world's population to grow unchecked. Every couple in the world, she said, should have access to the kind of family planning services people in Britain take for granted. Over the last 40 years, the world's population has doubled to 5.4 billion. It's likely to rise above 8 billion by 2020 and to 10 billion by the middle of the next century, nearly double the present figure.
Maria Immaculado is happy. Her baby boy is healthy and she can go home. Hers is one of 200 births each month at the Miguel Couto Hospital in Rio de Janeiro. It may not sound much, but multiplied across the world, It adds up to a population explosion. The next decade will see the fastest population growth ever, a London every month. The vast majority will be born in poor countries, many of them to families who can barely cope with looking after the children they already have. Here in the Rocinha district, 1 in 3 pregnant women who go to the local hospital have tried to abort.
There is still a massive unmet demand for family planning services. At least 100 million couples throughout the world do not have the services they want. And with population growth, another 100 million couples will demand these services during the coming decade, and we must not fail them.
But this is an issue on which the Catholic Church has intervened. The Vatican delegation, here celebrating Mass at Rio's Cathedral, has ensured that any specific references to the use of contraceptives has been kept off the summit documents that link population growth to economic degradation. Many believe the Church, supported by some developing countries, has undermined any attempt to control population.
I think perhaps there are antagonists who blame the Church for this, but that really betrays a short-sightedness on their part, and an absence of understanding of the necessity of coupling development with motivation.
If you do not look at the situation on matters that relate to development closely, then you're actually missing the point. If you are in a state of abject poverty, then there's hardly anything you can do about controlling population.
And unless there's greater emphasis on women in development plans, there's little chance of cutting back population growth.
The 900 million people likely to be born in poor countries over the next decade or so will still only account for a fraction of world consumption and waste. So the argument here is whether the poor should cut back their birth rates or the rich change their lifestyle. George Alagaya, BBC News, Rio de Janeiro.
The leaders of Czechoslovakia's 2 biggest parties are holding talks which could result in the ending of the existing federation between the Czech lands and Slovakia. Vladimir Mečiar, winner of the weekend's elections in the Slovak Republic, has said he thinks the 2 states will separate within 2 months.
Václav Klaus, the Prime Minister-designate, will have great difficulty holding Czechoslovakia together. This morning, his attempt began in negotiations with Vladimir Mečiar, the Slovak nationalist. Thanks to years of Slovak suspicion and resentment of the Czechs, Mr. Mečiar has a clear mandate to make an immediate declaration of sovereignty. But just before polling day, he told a reporter from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that he wanted much more, full independence as soon as possible.
How long before we see an independent Slovakia? 2 months. 2 months.
Many ordinary people in Slovakia will support that. They feel culturally different and economically exploited. They believe Prague's free market reforms, orchestrated by Václav Klaus, have been at the expense of their smokestack industries. But not all of them want full independence, at least not yet, so Mr. Mečiar might not be able to move as fast as he wants. None of this is to the liking of Václav Havel, the dissident who became the president. He said today he won't seek re-election if his country falls apart. In Czechoslovakia, the euphoria of the Velvet Revolution of 1989 has disappeared. Now they talk about a velvet divorce, an amicable settlement between the Slovaks and the Czechs, which will avoid the bitterness and violence suffered elsewhere in the old communist world.
Nationalists in Azerbaijan have claimed victory in the republic's first multi-party presidential election. The result is likely to mean Azerbaijan will distance itself from Russia and develop closer ties with neighbouring Turkey. The leader of the Popular Front Party, Albufaz Elchibey, has said he will seek international help to end the war with Armenia over the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. The fighting has claimed at least 1,500 lives in the last 4 years.
It was the first time Azeris had had any choice at all in a presidential election, and there was a heavy turnout. In this village, they brought out the local band to entertain voters as they cast their ballots. Of the 5 candidates, one seemed to be the clear favourite.
Abulfaz Elchibey.
Abulfaz Elchibey.
Elchibey.
Abulfaz Elchibey, an intellectual once imprisoned by the communists for slandering the Soviet system, swept to power with 60% of the vote. In his campaign, he promised a sea change for Azerbaijan, taking it right out of Moscow's sphere of influence, probably leaving the Commonwealth of Independent States. Instead, he'll forge close ties with the Turks, whom the Azeris regard as blood brothers, linked by language and temperament. Turkey was the first country to open an embassy here, and it's investing heavily in Azerbaijan's development. But it was the war with Armenia that dominated the election, with most voters apparently favouring candidates deemed likely to regain the lost territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. A new map produced by the government shows the steady fall of Azeri villages to the Armenians. Mr. Elchibey has promised to curb what he calls Armenian expansionism, but it's not at all clear how he'll go about it. His predecessor, Ayaz Mutalibov, was violently ousted from power because of reverses in the war. It's a question of national pride, and Mr. Elchibey may need some speedy results to avoid the same fate. Angus Roxburgh, BBC News, Baku.
The Russian President Boris Yeltsin has apparently angered Mikhail Gorbachev by taking away his official ZIL limousine. It's the latest in a series of rows between the Russian president and the former Soviet leader. Mr. Gorbachev has recently criticized Boris Yeltsin's handling of the economy.
After Mr. Gorbachev resigned at Christmas, he was still allowed to keep his luxurious ZIL limousine as a perk. But now he's lost his car as well as his job. And today he accused the man who's taken it away from him, Boris Yeltsin, of petty vindictiveness.
I don't want to lower myself to the level of judging this decision. It does not correspond to normal human behaviour.
But Mr. Gorbachev clearly feels humiliated. Tonight we watched him get into his new vehicle, a modest Volga, the kind of car used every day by millions of Russians. It's as if Boris Yeltsin had given him a Ford Escort to replace a Rolls-Royce. Ever since the failed coup last August, relations between these two men have gone from bad to worse. Nowadays, of course, there's no doubt that Boris Yeltsin is boss, whether it's coaching his football team or running the country. But he's been accused by Mr. Gorbachev of leading Russia into economic and social disaster. For his part, a furious Mr. Yeltsin recently claimed that Mikhail Gorbachev still harbours political ambitions.
He gave me his word he'd never return to politics. So much for his word.
Today, Mr. Gorbachev put a brave face on the loss of his limousine, but as one newspaper here said, if he continues to annoy Boris Yeltsin, he may end up riding round on a bicycle. Ben Brown, BBC News, Moscow.
A memorial service has taken place on the Falkland Islands, commemorating the 57 Welsh Guardsmen who died during the landings at Bluff Cove 10 years ago today. From the Falklands, Bob Simpson reports.
Nowadays, Fitzroy is a tranquil place. Amid the calm, families of those who died, Falkland Islanders and servicemen, have come to remember 10 years on. Among them, Shirley Dale, her son, a Welsh Guardsman, lost, and her husband dead before he could revisit. She brought his ashes to scatter where her son died. A plain, touching ceremony, recalling the awful day when Argentine Skyhawks swooped across the water to attack the Sir Galahad and the Sir Tristram as the troops prepared to disembark.
At least I'll feel that my son symbolically has somebody with him now, so I can stay and be a mother for my son that I have left, and my husband will be with his other son. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be.
Here are prayers and thanksgiving.
Ashore, all gathered at the memorials to the Welsh Guards and to the Royal Fleet Auxiliary men, 50 or more of them in all, who gave their lives less than a week before the Falklands were back in British hands. Bob Simpson, BBC News, Fitzroy, the Falkland Islands.
And the main news again. The Press Complaints Commission and the Archbishop of Canterbury have condemned some reporting of the Prince and Princess of Wales marriage. Newsnight is on BBC Two at 10:30 as usual, but that's the 9 o'clock news tonight. Good night.
It was business as usual for Princess Diana as she took Prince Harry back to school today. The press were out in force to catch any reaction from her after the alleged revelations about the royal marriage. But all they got on her return was a contemptuous stare. Neither Diana or Charles have commented so far, and it's understood the Queen wants it to stay that way. But increasingly, other people and organisations are speaking up on their behalf.
What upsets me is that this is so damaging to the nation. It's damaging to our image abroad. The monarchy sums up this nation. It's damage to our self-image at home. It's repellent.
Members of the Press Complaints Commission discussed the situation for most of the day. They had no way of knowing if the allegations reported are true, but say the sheer weight of speculation is unacceptable.
The Commission have been distressed by this reversion by some newspapers to the worst excesses of the 1980s.
And MPs say if news organisations don't show some restraint, laws will be enacted to protect the royals' right to privacy.
And I think they should be left alone. They're a couple who's married, may or may not have problems, and it's their business. They shouldn't have to live in a goldfish bowl, be they royals, be they members of Parliament, be they members of the media.
Politicians aren't the only ones calling for restraint. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, has added his weight to the argument, urging the media to back off and give the royal couple a chance. The problem for newspaper editors is that the public has an insatiable appetite for stories about the royals. The difficulty is where to draw the line. Some editors already are worried the recent overkill could harm the monarchy.
If you want the Wales' marriage to come unstuck, then you don't care what you run in the papers. But if you want it to survive, then you think about the level of grief and pressure that this must create upon the Prince and Princess of Wales in this situation.
And questions are now being asked about the accuracy of some of the most damaging allegations, like the time Diana allegedly tried to throw herself down the stairs to end her life. The Daily Mirror and the reporter who covered the event when it happened say the suicide claim is a lie, that the fall was an accident.
The Princess of Wales was walking down the stairs at Sandringham House. She slipped the last few steps on her bottom, nothing very serious.
The Sunday Times, which is running the serialisation of the controversial new Diana book, released a statement from a close friend of the princess who says the suicide attempts did take place. But as one royal insider noted, if that's true, how come no one has ever spotted the inevitable scars and bruises on one of the world's most photographed women? In London, Steve Kerry, 11 a.m. In London, Steve Kerry, 7 Nightly News. In London, Steve Kerry, 3 National News.
I have grave doubts about the allegations in the book about any so-called suicide attempts. The one specific example which the author Andrew Morton referred to, he says took place at Sandringham in 1982. I was a reporter who broke that story, that the princess had fallen downstairs, and I don't accept that she hurled herself down the staircase as he alleges.
How does that make you feel then as a journalist?
Well, I feel as though perhaps that story was hijacked by Andrew. I've known the guy for several years and I respect his work in the past, but I feel that he's gone way off beam here with these allegations.
So that suicide, or that attempt as being portrayed, you're quite convinced was just simply an accident. Describe to us what your source told you.
Well, I had a very close source at the time in 1982, and the scenario, as he then told me, and I checked it yesterday, was that just before lunch on that day in early January, the royal family were going on a picnic or a barbecue on the beach in Norfolk, and the Princess of Wales was walking down the stairs at Sandringham House. She slipped the last few steps on her bottom, nothing very serious, and landed at the foot of the stairs. She said, there's no problem, I'm okay. Charles went to her aid. The Queen and the Duke carried on to the picnic. But Charles called in the local doctor, who pronounced that she was okay, and 2 hours later she then rejoined that picnic.
Simply an accident?
An accident, yeah.
What about the Queen Mother, who was supposed to have found her slumped at the foot of the stairs?
Well, my source says the Queen Mother wasn't even there. But then it gets even more complicated after that, because the book suggests there were 3 or 4 other so-called attempts at suicide, but does not specify where and how these incidents took place. What the book does say is that the princess supposedly stabbed herself with a penknife in the leg or in the chest, that she slashed her wrist with a razor, Well, as your viewers will know, as do many other people around the world, that if you look at film and photographs of the princess, where are the scars? Where are the wounds?
What do you think it's all about?
I think that perhaps Andrew got this part of the book wrong. I think he's right that there are problems with the marriage, but I don't believe there were attempts at suicide.
So just a media beat-up?
A bit of hype, I think, perhaps most of it by the Sunday Times, which is serialising the book. We are, after all, in the middle of a circulation war.
Do you feel, as a competent working journalist, a long time in Fleet Street, that you're approaching just about as close as you can go without restraints being imposed?
I think we've actually gone over the edge now. And I expect there to be a writ for libel from either the Prince or the Princess of Wales, or both of them. If that is not forthcoming, then this is going to get worse and worse. And I actually think there should be some curbs now to stop the flood of nonsense that's being written about them.
A libel case?
It could happen. It could happen.
Wouldn't that be self-defeating because there'd be more publicity generated by them having to go to court?
Initially, yes. But the overall effect would be that it would stop this floodgate of people saying whatever they want about the royal family without any fear of retribution or denial. It's got to be stopped, I feel.
LBC News Talk, the Mike Carlton Morning Report, 10 minutes past 7 o'clock, and so to the story that all Britain is talking about this morning. Did Diana try to commit suicide? Is Charles uncaring, unloving?
Open season continues into the private lives of the Prince and Princess of Wales, with the British media machine moving into top gear. Each new revelation promises to be more amazing than the last. The Evening Standard has discovered Diana's diary of public engagements is clear from August, and points out that the Duchess of York also slipped off the social calendar just before she separated from Prince Andrew. Rumours abound over the true relationship between Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, and whether the suicide allegations are true. The sheer weight of the media speculation has been labelled odious by the Archbishop of Canterbury and criticised by the Press Council. Even Prime Minister John Major spoke out in Washington. So what are the implications of this unprecedented storm of publicity? LBC Radio morning host Mike Carlton is unsure.
Half the country says, well, these things should come out. We're a bit fed up with the royals anyway. And the other half of the country says, this is outrageous. This sort of stuff should simply not be reported in the press. It's a scandal and an outrage. So nobody quite knows what to think about it. It's a fascinating story.
Royal biographer Ingrid Seward is more outspoken.
I don't think it's something that's going to rock the monarchy, because it's about a marriage, and it's very personal, and nothing. It's at the moment, apart from a few quotes from close friends of Diana's, which of course we can't dispute and we know are perfectly valid. It's all allegations, and very unkind allegations. I think to talk about somebody attempted suicides is very, very unkind. And if indeed it's not true, I think the royal family should do something about it. For once, I really think they should, because it's libelous and scandalous.
Do you think her friends or Diana herself had any idea what was going to happen?
I like to think that Diana didn't realise. I don't see how anyone, and I know she's been around for a long time now, but I still don't see how anyone could envisage the kind of absolute furore this has caused. I certainly didn't. I mean, we knew it was going to make waves, but each newspaper is vying for to get a better story, and I think it's going to go on, and I don't think she could have understood that in a million years. I don't think she could have understood that, and I think she's been told to stand back from it, and that's exactly what she's doing.
The member for Ealing North, Harry Greenway, says enough is enough.
We feel that the royal family does a marvellous job. At least I, speaking as a politician, feel that the royal family does a magnificent job, and I don't like to see them hurt.
As rumours continue to circulate in the British media, despite warnings from the Press Council, Buckingham Palace is under pressure to respond to the allegations. Harold Brooks Baker of Burke's Peerage, royal chroniclers for more than 200 years, says the palace has a constitutional crisis on its hands.
If they don't do something quickly, there will be more books of the Kitty Kelly variety, which probably will destroy the royal family. So it's got to be able to defend itself and have the proper advice, because republicanism in this country is growing at a fast rate, not because they don't like the Queen, not because they don't like the Prince of Wales, but because the public has been led to believe that many things are true that are not.
There have been some suggestions, only half joking, that Britain could end up being a republic before Australia is.
If the royal family does nothing about this problem that it's now facing, it will be a republic within the next 5 to 10 years, yes.
There is a feeling, and it's growing in Britain, that there are too many royals, that there are too many princesses and earls and dukes, and too many hangers-on, all getting taxpayers' money to go around being royal. A lot of people are fed up with that. The royal family doesn't pay taxes, they cost a lot of money, and there are too many of them behaving too badly. And I think a lot of them would like to see that the royal family tree pruned, if you like, severely pruned.
No, I don't think so. I think the monarchy is very deeply entrenched into our life here and into other countries across the world where the Queen is Queen, and I don't think that this will change anything.
But Mr. Brooks-Baker says it's time the royal family dragged itself into the 20th century by setting up a proper press office and employing a public relations firm within the walls of the palace.
This type of publicity, built on half-truths and innuendos and outright lies, could destroy them.
With allegations of another royal marriage on the rocks, the media were out in force. As Princess Diana arrived taking her son Prince Harry to school, every move was being watched. Palace tactics so far have been to ignore the headlines. How long that policy remains, no one is quite sure. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Carey, certainly wasn't staying quiet. He told the media, "The current speculation about intimate personal matters has exceeded the boundaries which should be observed in a society claiming to respect basic human values." Minutes later, the Press Complaints Committee waded into the battle, savaging the press coverage.
The Commission have been distressed by this reversion by some newspapers to the worst excesses of the 1980s and are bound to state continuance of this type of journalism will threaten the future of self-regulation just at the time when it appears to be succeeding.
The royals have found some strange allies in this crisis. The Daily Mirror, normally first onto a scandal, the Sunday Times, and its owner Rupert Murdoch for publishing the original story. Calling him a Republican, they claimed he was playing a game with the monarchy, and it had support from other papers.
I think that Mr. Murdoch's agenda in this country is partly to make money and partly to try and do down what he perceives as the establishment, and the monarchy in particular. And I think he simply regards the royal family as fair prey for anything that his papers want to do.
I'm not a Republican at all, and I think having a monarch, a constitutional monarch, as head of state works rather well in Britain. But I don't think it's an institution that can be taken for granted or treated with kid gloves all the time.
President Bush, feeling the Perot heat, prepares for a TV blitz. Just when you thought Yugoslavia couldn't get any worse, new savagery today. And Los Angeles Chief Gates. He tries a bluff, but calls it off. He will retire after all.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting tonight from NBC News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. When Ross Perot first landed on the menu of presidential candidates, many of President Bush's advisors dismissed him as the flavor of the month. Well, now they're desperately trying to get the Perot recipe because it turns out to be so popular. NBC's Jim Miklashevsky is at the White House tonight with the latest strategy there. Jim?
Tom, Bush aides now admit that their campaign strategy just hasn't worked. So Bush will now become the prime-time president. Campaigning from the White House today, President Bush was making his pitch for a balanced budget amendment and a photo op with state legislators.
We've been for it for a long, long time.
But that may be news to many. In fact, Bush is so frustrated with his inability to deliver any message that he's agreed to hit the big time on primetime TV.
Look out, George Bush! Here comes H. Ross Perot, right here.
Bush aides looked with envy at the way Ross Perot has been able to play the television talk shows, to parlay his long-shot candidacy into the lead and to avoid the issues.
I can't soundbite.
They even give credit to Bill Clinton, who they say pulled off a risky appearance on late-night TV. So in a shift in strategy, Bush will make the rounds of many major news and talk shows. Not everyone thinks this primetime strategy will work.
I think it's a sign of how utterly out of ideas they are, how frantic they are, how desperate they are to do something to confront Ross Perot.
Meanwhile, the latest polls are all over the place. One shows Perot with a substantial lead, Bush and Clinton tied. The other has Perot and Bush in a virtual dead heat. But Bush's own campaign manager worries that Perot is eating into the president's base, stealing away those who voted for Bush 4 years ago.
Those people who for most of his term have approved of the president and who may not be totally committed to voting for him, certainly those concern us.
So Bush is playing heavily to his conservative core, pushing that balanced budget amendment and stressing jobs over the environment as he heads off to the Rio conference Thursday. By the way, that new Bush TV campaign will get underway next week. Look for it in your local listings. Tom?
Jim, today Ross Perot was meeting with big city mayors who feel that they have been stiffed by the Bush administration. Will that give Perot new credibility in Washington?
Well, you know, Perot has said he wanted to talk to the experts. So those big city mayors who were in fact frustrated with White House and congressional gridlock were more than happy to head to Dallas and give Perot a fill and a boost to his credibility.
I gather, however, that the White House in its television round of appearances is excluding certain people from an opportunity to interview the president.
Well, Tom, they think that some of the daytime, early morning talk shows are perhaps more even-handed, so they're going to avoid the evening network TV shows. They say some of the network TV anchors have turned themselves into big-time star prosecutors.
Thank you, Jim Miklashevsky at the White House tonight. As for Bill Clinton, he too has a new approach. He wants the country to believe that he's the only presidential candidate who can work with Congress, avoiding gridlock. NBC's Andrea Mitchell tonight.
In a high-risk strategy for someone trying to run as an outsider, Bill Clinton says he'll work with Congress now on legislation to be passed if he became president.
I expect this to be a real challenge to the Congress. I know that the next president has to be able to work with Congress, but we also have to challenge the Congress to change.
Congressional leaders were slow to embrace Clinton. Texas Senator Lloyd Benson only endorsed him last week. That's partly because Clinton has taken plenty of shots at Congress, like this TV ad during the New Hampshire primary.
For 12 years, the politicians in Washington have raised their pay.
Today, Clinton was trying to play both the inside and the outside game.
I was the first presidential candidate to criticize the so-called midnight pay raise.
Clinton's priorities include proposals Congress has either been unable to pass or that the president has vetoed. Campaign finance reform, a waiting period for handgun purchases, college tuition loan guarantees, universal health care.
And in the first 100 days, in the first several months of his administration, we can make substantial progress in enacting that kind of a national plan.
Pushing hard for the strategy, a kibitzer from New York.
Now you go to the American people and say, for the first time in a quarter of a century, you're going to get a government that works. Bush can't give you that. Perot can't give you that. He hasn't worked with anybody.
I think that the one way to break any deadlock is to elect Governor Clinton as president.
Of course, electing a Democratic Southern governor president is no guarantee that he can get along with Congress. And doing it during the campaign is a tough balancing act for Clinton.
He's got to show that he can work with Congress. But at the same time, how do you show that you can work with Congress without getting in bed with them?
Some Democrats in Congress don't want to follow Clinton's lead, especially since some liberals find a lot in Clinton's program that's hard to swallow. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
And in a year when politicians seem to have few friends, political action committees, PACs, are practically lining up to contribute money to them. There are more than 4,400 registered PACs, and they have raised $226 million during the 15 months ending in March. They have spent $188 million of that, so there's plenty left. NBC's Lisa Myers tonight has a look at a new study on money and politics in America.
Worried about becoming the political equivalent of the spotted owl, congressional incumbents are amassing record amounts of campaign money from special interests. A study by the Federal Election Commission found that special interest PACs have given $73 million to House and Senate candidates so far, up 14% from the last election despite the recession. A staggering 92% of PAC contributions went to incumbents, only a pittance to challengers.
On the one hand, the country is sending this extraordinarily powerful message that it doesn't want any more politics as usual. And on the other hand, you have these special PACs merrily going about their business while Rome burns.
The number one giver, the Teamsters, who contributed almost $1.4 million, up 55% since the last election. What they want in return is a bill prohibiting companies from replacing strikers. Number two, the trial lawyers, almost $940,000, up 20%. Their concern, stopping new product liability laws. Among those who more than doubled their contributions was AutoPAC, made up largely of dealers of foreign cars.
We're getting an unprecedented level of requests from incumbent members over the course of the past 16 months.
Glacken says frightened congressmen have called him saying they need more money early this year. His group usually responds because it wants Congress to repeal the luxury tax, which is hurting dealers. But Congressman Bill Alexander of Arkansas learned recently that lots of special interest money does not always buy protection. Alexander raised $176,000 in PAC money. His two opponents, only $50. Alexander still lost. Steve Stockmeyer advises PACs that they'd better heed the message from voters.
This is a trend year. Things are going to change.
One thing already has changed. Contributing to an incumbent used to be a safe investment. Now it's political roulette. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
When Nightly News continues in a moment, Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates toys with his critics right to the end. And Bob Dotson with some South Carolina cops who are very much part of their community. For them, a crack house is a home.
You probably think the best American car value is some little econo box you have to settle for, right? Nope. It's a Buick. The luxurious Buick Park Avenue. That's according to the Complete Car Cost Guide. They calculated the 5-year cost of depreciation, financing, insurance, fuel, maintenance, and repairs, and found that Park Avenue is the best American car value. For a free reprint from the Complete Car Cost Guide, call 1-800-4-BUICK.
For painful gas, which would you choose? Your antacid or Gas-X, the tablet made for gas? It's extra strength, 100% simethicone to fight gas faster. Faster than your antacid. Fight gas right with Gas-X.
If your doctor has recommended Metamucil and you like the results, but you don't like those glasses of thick liquid, change to FiberCon. Get the same fiber action in easy-to-swallow tablets. Get doctor-recommended FiberCon.
As the fighting for Sarajevo reached savage new levels today, this is the fiercest yet. The United Nations moved towards sending in another 1,100 troops to open up the airport so relief supplies can get through. And as NBC's Tom Aspel tells us tonight, all the international pressure on Serbia to stop the destruction of Bosnia, it's all failing.
Sarajevo television managed to transmit these pictures to the outside world today. The unrelenting bombardment of the Bosnian capital. Reported street fighting between Serbian irregulars and Bosnians on the city's outskirts. The Serbians have poured artillery, rocket, and mortar fire onto Sarajevo from the surrounding hills. Shells have been landing at the rate of one every few seconds. More than half of Sarajevo's 500,000 people are believed to be still inside the city. The Serbian irregulars surrounding Sarajevo are unwilling to stop firing. Their strength is not so much in their numbers, but in the huge amounts of weaponry handed over to them by units of the Belgrade-run Federal Army. Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic says he has no control over the militias bombarding Sarajevo, but most people don't believe him. Belgrade is hardly on its knees under the UN-imposed sanctions, but the effects are being felt. Gas is becoming hard to get. A strict rationing system comes into force tonight. Food prices rise by the day. Meat, flour, sugar, and bread have all doubled in the last week. Most factories are still operating, but they have raw materials to last only for a month or two. And rumors of impending strikes for higher wages to keep pace with rising prices are racing around the capital.
The sanctions on Serbia won't be enough to save Sarajevo. The Serbian militias may have to be forced to stop bombarding the Bosnian capital, and that'll take a massive foreign military operation. Tom Asfal, NBC News, Belgrade.
In this country, William McGowan, the founder and chairman of MCI, died of a heart attack today. He was 64 years old. He underwent a heart transplant 5 years ago. McGowan's MCI was the first major competitor to AT&T. A big surprise today in Los Angeles, Police Chief Daryl Gates said he was just bluffing when he threatened not to retire at month's end. He tried to force the city to promote 8 officers, but the city didn't blink. More now from NBC's Keith Morrison.
Good morning.
Anybody could see that Daryl Gates, soon to be the ex-police chief of Los Angeles, was having the time of his life.
I don't quite understand why so many of you are so interested in this.
Interested? They jammed the place to hear how Gates was pulling just about everybody's chain when he threatened not to retire as planned at the end of this month.
And I finally said, screw you all. I'll retire when I want to retire. That's an accurate quote. Screw them all.
He certainly got their attention. The mayor was apoplectic. The police commission held an extraordinary weekend session to try to figure out how to make the man leave.
It's enough to confuse anybody. Gates saying he made his threat to prevent politicians from torpedoing department promotions. The politicians saying Gates is more like a deranged divorcee who won't leave the house.
I have never dealt with a sicker mind and a more outrageous personality, megalomaniac personality, than this man.
Baloney. Absolute, pure, unadulterated baloney.
If it all sounds a bit like Family Feud, it is. Police politics turning L.A. into a kind of Looneyville by the sea at precisely the time cops and civilians alike want something more rational.
I get a feeling that nobody's in charge. I keep asking, who's the boss?
And in the end, it was indeed just a bluff.
My plans are to retire at the end of the month. I've said that over and over and over.
The mayor said he'll believe it when he sees it. And the chief said,
and I love every moment right down to the very last moment. Thank you very much.
At least he's enjoying himself. Keith Morrison, NBC News, Los Angeles.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Industrial is closed up slightly. Trading today was moderate.
It's nothing serious. It only wakes me up a couple of times a week. It really doesn't affect me. I avoid foods that are fried or spicy. I can deal with it. I just take antacids.
If you have frequent heartburn symptoms like acid indigestion or burning in the chest, talk to your doctor. These may be signs of a serious medical problem. Your doctor has treatment plans that can help.
It's only a heartburn. I should learn to live with it, right?
Frequent heartburn. Isn't it time you talk to your doctor?
Looks great. But come on, I mean, you know, you could have gotten yourself another BMW or a Lexus.
I suppose. But why? This had everything I wanted. Power, great handling, ABS,
Yeah, but
airbag, leather, everything. I couldn't see spending $10,000, $20,000 more for what?
Who makes it?
Pontiac. It's the new Bonneville.
Nice.
I'm home. There you guys are. Hiya, honey. Well, what's wrong? This is usually your favorite part of the day. Oh, bad headache. Let me help. I'll take the kids. You take a Motrin IB. The doctor says it's the same medicine as in prescription Motrin, but in non-prescription strength. Really works on my headaches. So go relax. I'll take care of Mr. Duck.
Motrin IB, the relief of Motrin in non-prescription strength.
Dropouts and misfits, tonight's America close up. Alternative schools, their radical approaches to education have given hope to hundreds of public school failures, but they do remain controversial and at the top of school board hit lists. One established alternative school closed today, officials blaming budget cuts. NBC's Roger O'Neill tonight in Denver, Colorado.
John Fresquez had dropped out or had been kicked out of every school he ever attended, except one. So had most of the other 31 graduates of high school redirection, a place for kids who don't fit in anywhere else.
I began in September with many obstacles before me. A restraining order, the law, and even my first love were against me. Despite everyone saying I never would, I succeeded because of me.
This was the first, but also the last graduating class for Denver's most alternative high school. In a unanimous vote, the school board has closed it.
High school redirection is not delivering the curriculum of the Denver Public Schools to its students in a way that can be tracked. Our mission is not to house students. Our mission is to educate students to that curriculum.
Across the country, alternative schools for at-risk kids are under increasing pressure not to be too alternative. At high school redirection, there were no grades, no attendance records, no menu of science and math and English, no curriculum which you could put a box around to touch and feel and test. Principal Arnie Langberg.
That's what they don't like about us, they say, is that we pay all this attention to touchy-feely stuff and self-esteem, but where's the solid stuff? What we really are is a school that looks at all aspects of the person, not just how much material credit they can gain, but what they can do with it, who they are.
A test cannot do that. There is a final exam of sorts, sometimes over cake and cookies. Senior Dave Huffman tried to demonstrate what he has learned.
I've decided that I want to make a difference and I want to change the situation as it is. And
that wasn't true of you when you first came?
No. I thought school was really stupid and pointless. I've discovered that I have a talent for art.
And in his classroom gallery, this former misfit told us about the curriculum that the school board believes does not exist here.
I've used medical science or anatomy, muscle structure, bone structure. I've used art history, and you have to learn about all those things in order to come out with a print that you are satisfied with.
Rexford Brown is an expert in alternative programs and has written about the politics of education.
When you run into political cowardice and the difficulties that school boards have in trying to be accountable in an old-fashioned way, the tension becomes unhealthy.
The ultimate test, of course, is how these students will fare in the real world. Remember John Fresquez?
Hi. Good morning. I'm here to register for college classes.
Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Denver.
On tomorrow's America Close-Up, building the self-esteem of black children, a school inspiring students with a heavy dose of Afro-American history.
In recent years, doctors have discovered a flaw in eggs. They're extremely high in cholesterol, and a diet high in cholesterol and fat can contribute to the risk of heart disease. Nutritionists at Fleischmann's have found a way to overcome this flaw with Fleischmann's Egg Beaters, the only one that's 99% real egg with zero cholesterol and zero saturated fat. Next time you love an egg, crack open a carton. Fleischmann's Egg Beaters, the great tasting egg without a flaw.
Don't get hit by an annual fee. Carry the card that doesn't charge one. And keep yourself out of the hole. It pays to discover.
You make me feel so young.
Promise Extra Light Spread. Half the saturated fat and calories of margarine and a taste you'll enjoy with all your heart.
You make me feel so young.
Now Promise Extra Light in sticks. Get heart smart.
Boy, this couch weighs a ton. Where does it go, Miss Lansbury?
Oh, right there, please. Wow. If I lifted that, I'd need Bufferin for the aches and pains afterwards.
You really believe in Bufferin?
I certainly do.
It's strong, huh?
Extra strength Bufferin has the strongest dosage of aspirin that you can buy. And I've discovered that the buffers don't weaken it. They just help prevent aspirin stomach upset.
Shouldn't you discover the strength of Bufferin?
And for nighttime aches, pains, and sleeplessness, try Bufferin AF Nighttime. It's aspirin-free.
This castle once had 26 bathrooms. It'd be nice if one of them still worked. Why? What if my diarrhea comes back? Relax. We took my Imodium AD caplets. Just once. I usually take the pink stuff 2 or 3 times. Imodium AD is much better.
Imodium AD caplets are so effective, they often work in one dose. Instead of dose after dose after dose, like the pink stuff.
Ready to go? Before the sunset?
Imodium AD for diarrhea, the choice for one-dose relief.
Here's a quick check now of some of today's other news. 5 people were killed, 8 injured when a church van carrying kids to camp collided with a cement truck east of Dallas. The van apparently ran a stop sign. An oil refinery explosion in Wyoming set 2 tanks ablaze and injured at least 6 people, burning them severely. No word on the cause of that blast. High prices and long lines followed Russia's lifting of price controls on bread and milk. Officials say gasoline could be next. Off the coast of Florida, there's a battle between a treasure hunter and the federal government. Officials have gone to court to halt the search beneath the ocean's floor, arguing that the method used carries just too high a price environmentally. More from NBC's Robin Lloyd tonight.
Booty from the Spanish Main. It captured people's imagination and turned treasure hunter Mel Fisher into an American folk hero. But federal officials now have put a ban on Fisher's treasure hunting. They say he's been destroying the ocean floor within a national marine sanctuary in the Florida Keys.
This far exceeds anything that I've ever seen as far as damage intentionally done.
Underwater video shows huge 10-foot deep craters, as many as 100 of them blown in the ocean floor by backwash from ships' propellers. Fisher says there's no other way to hunt for treasure. While he claims no permanent environmental damage, concern is growing about the fragile coral reefs off the Florida Keys. Some marine biologists say they may be gone in 10 years.
We're trying to protect what little we have left out there, so the real disagreement with Mel is not that he's a treasure hunter as much that he's ruined a natural resource.
All of this controversy surrounding Mel Fisher and his quest for gold has sparked heated controversy here in the Florida Keys. Many people believe his treasure hunting methods have gone too far this time.
Just think you can't just randomly blast holes in the bottom of the ocean.
But all that Spanish gold has helped draw tourists and money to the Keys.
I don't like the bottom getting tore up, but I don't think we should leave the gold laying there either.
Fisher's ships are now tied up at the dock, banned from hunting in the Florida Keys. His divers claim they were within days of finding another big treasure from the wrecks of 19 Spanish galleons which sank 260 years ago.
We may never get it because of the federal government. They completely put us out of business.
Fisher now acknowledges this may be one treasure he won't be allowed to find. Robin Lloyd, NBC News, Key West, Florida.
One of Britain's treasures is Diana, Princess of Wales, and a new book alleges that Di attempted suicide 5 times, despairing over her marriage to Prince Charles. Well, as Diana took her boys to school today, the Church of England said enough is enough and asked the British press to stop its crying.
I swim, I jog. I love junk food. Sometimes even I get constipation. When it happens to me, I take this little pill. It's X-Lax. Surprised?
Now, only X-Lax pills give you 3 choices. Regular, extra gentle, or new maximum relief with 50% more medicine. Today's X-Lax for regular people who sometimes aren't.
To fight the effects of corrosion, the body of the Buick Regal has been built with 2-side galvanized steel that goes beyond what most car makers use. Beyond Honda, beyond Toyota. In fact, all Buicks are warranted against outer body rust-through for 6 years or 100,000 miles. And that's a promise you don't have to take with a grain of salt.
There's a certain itch that's so private, most people will only discuss it with their doctor. Fortunately, now you can get new Anusol HC1 ointment over the counter with the same prescription strength doctors have prescribed most.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hold oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.
Tylenol users discover a powerful name in aspirin-free pain relief.
It took away my headache. Aspirin-free Anacin worked as well as Tylenol.
Like Tylenol, aspirin-free Anacin is 100% aspirin-free acetaminophen, so it's gentle on your stomach.
Now I have a choice.
Here's an ingenious solution to a problem frustrating a lot of cities in this country: how to encourage decent housing and safe neighborhoods where crack cocaine is the drug of choice. NBC's Bob Dotson went to Columbia, South Carolina.
Elsie Calloway found a drug pusher selling cocaine in her basement.
And it was terrible over here. I just wonder why this world gotta be like this.
Police closed nearby crack houses.
You're on arrest for distributing crack cocaine.
But addicts always came back. Until the cops tried something different.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Patrolman James Jones now lives in the house he once raided.
The third night after getting some sleep, you know, Val jumping up every time I hear something go down the street. I said, good choice.
Columbia, South Carolina made him an offer that would make the Godfather grin. His family got a home fixed up first rate for about half what other renovated houses in the neighborhood cost. But Lisa didn't want to bet her life.
He said, that's the house. I said, no way.
A tough sell? You bet. But Price Street is only a block away from a stable neighborhood. There is no vast area of high crime in Columbia. So where cops replace criminals in crack houses, those streets can become stable too. Mike and Debbie Hendricks just became the 10th couple to leave the suburbs and move to the city.
These cabinets are high.
Most young officers don't make enough to buy a home or even save for one.
Yeah.
As far as any debts that you might have.
With this deal, they pay no money down.
Independence.
Repairs, purchase price, and closing fees are folded into a 20-year mortgage at 4% interest.
Plus, we're in his district. If I have problems, I'm going to call the police.
No need so far. Elsie Calloway can tell her how quiet a street gets when a cop moves next door.
How you doing, Miss Calloway?
He's no longer just the man. He's a neighbor.
Hey, you see I got him working.
Bob Dotson, NBC News.
I told you I was going to get him.
Columbia, South Carolina.
That's nightly news for this Monday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. See you tomorrow night.
A U.S. director is piecing the 40-minute film back together in Denmark. He says the issues Chaplin deals with are very timely.
First of all, it's about homelessness, which isn't so much an issue here in Denmark, but it definitely is in America and certain other parts of the world. It also has fraudulent evangelists, preachers, who are stealing from people who are coming out of prison as they come out, and that's very timely in America. There's a lot of tele-evangelists who are, cheating the people who are sending money to them. So the film is 77 years later, oddly very up-to-date.
The movie will be called The Chaplin Puzzle. Well, thank you for joining us for this edition of Prime News. I'm Susan Rook at CNN Center in Atlanta. Up next, Larry King Live. Here's...
Gospodina predsjednika vlade, doktora Franje Gregorića.
Danas Republika Hrvatska osim svojih 260.000 prognanika zbrinjava i oko 270.000 izbjeglica iz Bosne i Hercegovine te oko 30.000 izbjeglica iz Srbije, to jest iz Vojvodine i Kosova, od kojih je registrirano njih 10.000. Mjesečno Republika Hrvatska troši oko 91 milijun njemačkih maraka za pokriće troškova zbrinjavanja tih ljudi. Ta svota daleko prelazi mogućnosti Republike Hrvatske, što se direktno odrazilo na porast inflacije u Republici. Bez obzira na želju i spremnost Republike Hrvatske da adekvatno zbrine sve prognanike i izbjeglice, bez pomoći međunarodne zajednice to više nije moguće.
Božo Brzica.
Ne smetaju oni, pa snima čovjek. Što će mi smetati, djeca? Nek vidi se šta radi.
Gdybym ja tak wiedział wszystko, to już bylibyśmy na pewno daleko dalej.
Ja też nadzieję wyrazimy.
Żeby doszło do podpisania, Rada Polska była przygotowana do pełnego wejwania rozwiązań, gdzie znajdujemy rozwiązania satysfakcjonujące instytucje państwa, niż na takiej bezwzględnej rywalizacji. Bo czasami jest tak, ja zauważyłem jedną rzecz i z poprzedniej kadencji.
Chciałam zapytać o inny potencjalnie konfliktowy punkt koalicyjny. To znaczy o to, czy pan premier wyobraża sobie, czy możliwy jest kompromis pomiędzy KPN-em, który chce podwojenia deficytu.
Myślę, że generalnie w odniesieniu do służb publicznych, a więc przede wszystkim policji, wojska, powinna obowiązywać zasada, że liczy się profesjonalizm i lojalność wobec państwa. Warto się zastanowić nad przyszłością i szybciutko podejść do budżetu na rok następny.
već stakla i prozorska stakla i drugo ulijetala unutra u bolnicu uslijed eksplozija.
U ovoj sobi su bili pacijenti?
Jeste, u ovoj sobi su bili pacijenti i poslije prve eksplozije mi smo ih već u unutrašnje hodnike u dubinu smjestili, a eksplozije su i dalje nastavljale.
Sinoć, dok su granate padale, donela na svet predivnu djevojčicu. Iako je još uvijek teško, sigurno i...
Povrijeđenih i sestre su dobro, istine, ljudi su uplašeni jako i uspjeli smo da ih nekako evakuišemo.
Fighting of leukemia all over the world. So as I said, signing of the convention is an investment. If it is so that the signing of the biodiversity treaty would affect negatively the US economics, the jobs in the US, at least at the short run, then I must say then biotechnology industry in the US up to now is based on, to say the least, immoral assumptions and activities.
The supports the body shop in the UK is a great example. We're hoping that that pressure is also being passed on to other countries.
Conference of the parties as to the procedure, as Barry said. So Japanese would like to see more clearly what kind of arrangements will be there so that they feel more relaxed to sign. To date, Japanese industry, after they do a research, it could be possible that industry
Temos alguns problemas. We have a few problems. Temos déficit que precisamos fechar. We have a deficit that we must close. E precisamos compartilhar a responsabilidade. Precisamos trabalhar juntos para que a coisa seja a nossa.
Ребята, кидай там.
Puxa, vai ter que plugar esse cabo amarelo, né, pra mudar pra cá, viu? Tá certo.
Is in serious difficulty. We have succeeded, I believe, in creating a global village in Rio de Janeiro. a global village that has as part of its community 8,000 organizations and institutions from 165 countries. A global community that has 30,000 participants a day.
We explained for His Excellency, the Minister, the difficulties which Kurdish people facing in Iraqi Kurdistan, and we asked Turkish support as usual. You know, we expressed to him our gratitude to the support of Turkish people and government for our cause, and we hope that this will continue. We asked him to support our efforts with Europe and the United States of America, because we are doing our best to convince them. Yeah, we are not for partition of Iraq. We are not for developing our administration to an independent state. But I explained to him that since 1970, Iraqi government, central government, recognized officially the right of Kurdish people in Iraq for self-rule, for autonomy. And Iraq has its own laws, law of the Autonomous Kurdistan, officially called Autonomous Kurdistan, and Legislative Council of Kurdistan, Executive Council of Kurdistan. These words and phrases are official and are recognized and published and used by Iraqi government. And for that, we say that there is no place for any kind of fear that Iraqi Kurdistan will be independent, and Iraqi Kurdistan always will remain as a friend to Turkish people and government. I think the only way to solve all problems of Iraq, including Kurdish problem, is to end dictatorship and replace it with a democratic, pluralistic, secular parliamentarian system. Otherwise, if there will be any negotiation, it must be through 688 resolution of the Security Council of United Nations and under the umbrella of United Nations. But tete-a-tete discussion with Saddam Hussein, I cannot expect any result from it. In the future, Kurdish people will decide who is serving the cause of the Kurds and who is harming Kurdish cause. And I can say that terrorism everywhere and always condemned by Kurdish people and cannot serve the interests of the Kurdish people. In contrary, it deforms and it harms the cause of the Kurds and the picture of the Kurdish people. You know, since 1961 we are fighting Iraqi various systems and regimes, and we have never been accused to use any kind of terrorist action at all, and we are proud of it. And we think that's enough to understand my attitude towards your apple. It's yours, not ours.
international en provenance de TDF Paris. This is the international phone from TDF Paris. Ceci est le son international en provenance de TDF Paris. This is the international phone from TDF Paris. Ceci est le son international.
No, perché ogni canale ha la sua fisionomia, e questo sarà un canale, i paesi che sono cablati attraverso la ridistribuzione via cavo, che non sarà diffuso anche attraverso frequenze terrestri. janvier, c'est la journée du début du marché européen. Et le marché européen, c'est une grande chose pour l'Europe, du point de vue commercial, du point de vue économique, mais même du point de vue de la communication.
C'est parce qu'il y a eu cette malheureuse guerre du Golfe et que de nombreuses équipes internationales se sont déployées pendant cette guerre que nous avons tous vu que les mêmes images revenaient sur les mêmes écrans du monde et que ces images étaient des images CNN. Et nous avons eu un peu honte, nous, Européens, d'être incapables de fournir des images autres que celles que la censure américaine laissait passer. Et donc, merci à CNN de nous avoir donné cette leçon de professionnalisme qui nous a permis d'aller plus vite dans notre engagement et dans la création d'Euronews. d'Euronews.
Pendant ces quelques jours, Madame, nous pourrons engager quelques grands thèmes touchant à la vie de nos deux pays, comme à la construction de l'Europe, comme à la paix dans le monde. Mais ce matin, c'est surtout la joie qui s'exprime, le plaisir de vous avoir parmi nous.
La Grande-Bretagne a sa place au cœur de l'Europe et l'avenir de l'Europe se confond avec le sien. C'est seulement en étant étroitement liée à la France qu'elle pourra tirer le meilleur parti des ouvertures et des chances que lui offre l'Europe.
international sound from TDF.
منهم يناصر الدعوة للدولة الدينية، و99% تناصر ما ندعو له وهو الدولة المدنية.
متخيلتش انه ضرب النار خالص. لما لقيت جوايا بقى ايه بينزل دم من هنا، فعرفت انه ضرب النار. فانا ما كنتش حاسس بيه غير لما جيت قومت حسيت ان عرفت بقى ان انا اتصبت يعني.
الشكل ايه اللي كانوا بيضربوا؟
الشكل ده شاب كده يعني، ده كبير شويه، مش يعني ملتحي، ويعتبر كحالي دقنه، بس بقى فتره ما حلقهاش يعني.
وكان
لابس طاقيه زرق كده لونها اخضر تقريبا. بس ما تمكناش منه اكتر من كده تاني يعني.
كان مغطي وشه؟
لا، هو كان حاطط الطاقيه دي منزلها لورا كده، ماسك الرشاش، كل اللي بص ناحيته كان يضربه طبعا. اي واحد كان يحاول ان هو ياخد نمره الموتوسيكل ولا حاجه كان يضرب عليه طلقه على طول.
exhibition of journalists dabbling their fingers in the stuff of other people's souls, says the Commission. And the government sets aside £2.5 million to help Maxwell pensioners, but many say it's not enough. Good evening. The Press Complaints Commission, the industry's watchdog, says the manner and tone of much of the reporting of the marriage of the Prince and Princess of Wales has, beyond doubt, been in breach of the newspaper code of practice, and in some cases a return to the worst excesses of the 80s. The Heritage Secretary, David Mellor, welcomed the criticism and said he would take it into account in his review of press regulation later this month. Earlier, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, said the current speculation about intimate personal matters has exceeded the boundaries which should be observed in a society claiming to respect basic human values. Andrew Neil, editor of the Sunday Times, which is serialising some of the allegations, said the Archbishop should be counselling members of the royal family with marital difficulties rather than lecturing the press. This report from our media correspondent, Nick Hyam.
When this morning's newspapers hit the streets, the Press Complaints Commission decided the sheer quantity of speculation about the royal marriage meant it couldn't remain silent. Today, it reminded newspapers that they're still on probation. The Commission's been dismissed as out of touch, but its members include the editors of two tabloids, the News of the World and the Daily Star, and a former lady-in-waiting to Princess Margaret. Members leaving after discussions lasting much of today decided the tone of newspaper reporting was unacceptable. The Commission's chairman, Lord MacGregor, wouldn't say whether he'd talked to the palace, nor whether the tabloid editors among his members agreed with today's strongly worded statement, which didn't mince words about the coverage.
Is an odious exhibition of journalists dabbling their fingers in the stuff of other people's souls in a manner which adds nothing to the legitimate public interest in the situation of the heir to the throne. The Commission have been distressed by this reversion by some newspapers to the worst excesses of the 1980s and are bound to state publicly their view that the continuance of this type of journalism will threaten the future of self-regulation just at the time when it appears to be succeeding.
And the Commission joined the Archbishop of Canterbury in condemning what he called the unnecessary pain of the children of people targeted by the press. One editor who serves on the Commission believes the press coverage could damage the monarchy.
If you want the British monarchy to fail, if you want the Wales marriage to come unstuck, then you don't care what you run in the papers. But if you want it to survive, then you think about the level of grief and pressure that this must create upon the Prince and Princess of Wales in this situation.
The editor of the Sunday Times dissociated himself from what he called the feeding frenzy of speculation by other newspapers, but defended his own decision to publish.
I have on-the-record support for what we claimed, and if you're telling me that I, as editor, having learned on the record that the Princess of Wales attempted to take her life by suicide, that I should then suppress that, then I think we go back to the days of the 1930s when the press was part of a cosy establishment club.
Over the weekend, the Prince and Princess were together in public at Prince William's School Sports, but left separately. The Commission says their behaviours put the state of their marriage in the public domain. But there have been renewed calls from MPs for laws to protect privacy, even that of public figures.
The fact of the matter is that there should be laws on privacy, whether it involves the royal family or the large majority of people. It doesn't really matter whether they're royal or otherwise. There should be a right to privacy unless it's in the public interest.
The Heritage Secretary, David Mellor, welcomed today's statement. He's due to decide next month whether the press is now well enough behaved to make a new privacy law unnecessary. Until this weekend, the Commission thought it was, but it's powerless to control newspapers if they choose to ignore today's warning. Now, it'll be for Mr. Mellor to weigh up whether the line between legitimate reporting and intrusive overkill needs to be redrawn, limiting press freedom in the process.
The government is to pay £2.5 million in emergency grants to help thousands of people whose pension funds were defrauded by the late Robert Maxwell. The Social Security Secretary, Peter Lilly, said the money would provide temporary funding while efforts continued to recover the assets still missing from the Maxwell companies.
Maxwell pensioners, many facing financial ruin, descended in Westminster this afternoon to lobby MPs to get compensation for the loss of their pensions in the Maxwell fraud. The response came from the Social Security Secretary, Peter Lilly. He's putting up £2.5 million of emergency grants from government to keep the pension funds going.
Rarely in the catalogue of crime has a fraud as callous and despicable as the pillaging of pension funds by Robert Maxwell. It raises two questions. First, how can we minimise the loss and anguish faced by the pensioners? Second, how can we ensure that such a crime never occurs?
But he added that since banks had profited from Maxwell in the boom days, he's also passing the hat round the city for voluntary contributions. But the opposition thought the government was not doing enough.
In essence, the statement tells us very few details, except that the rescue package of £2.5 million amounts to a derisory 0.5% of the stolen assets.
The pensioners, who had earlier presented a petition to the Prime Minister, had hoped for much more.
It really just did nothing at all to help the situation forward, other than this drip-feeding, this temporary arrangement.
Altogether, it was discovered that nearly £700 million was missing from the pension funds of Maxwell's companies. Of that, about £230 million has been recovered by the liquidators. That still leaves £465 million missing, much of which has gone forever. But the liquidators believe that up to £100 million of it is held by banks in the form of shares as security for loans. Of this, about £30 million is with National Westminster, the rest with foreign banks. These figures make the government's rescue look tiny, but an MP who's been campaigning for the pensioners thinks it could work.
I would have thought it's inconceivable that we, as a House of Commons, are going to allow people to have lost their pension or had it reduced, for the government to say it's going to be reinstated, only for the government to stand back and allow it to be snatched away again.
But the repercussions of the Maxwell scandal are far from over. Today, an official inquiry into his flotation of Daily Mirror shares last year was launched by the Department of Trade and Industry.
The government is to carry out an independent review of all occupational pension schemes to prevent a repeat of the Maxwell scandal. It's expected to look at ways to increase safeguards and improve the way pensions are regulated.
Many of the pension funds built up with the savings of British workers have accumulated immense wealth. British coal is presently up for sale, complete with a pension fund worth more than £10 billion. Yet despite the value of UK pension funds, it's taken a major fraud to force the government to acknowledge the shortcomings of its regulation. Commenting on the Maxwell affair, the Common Social Security Committee concluded that Pontius Pilate would have blushed at so many witnesses washing their hands of responsibility. Sean Hand was legal advisor to the committee.
The government has had several warnings during the course of the 1980s.
And the Queen tells the French that Britain is a committed and an energetic partner in the European community. Good evening. BT has been ordered to cut its telephone charges next year. The industry watchdog, Oftel, said the command was not negotiable, and if BT didn't agree, the issue would be referred to the Monopolies and Mergers Commission. Oftel wants average price rises to be pegged to 7.5% below the rate of inflation. Under BT's existing pricing policy, businesses and heavy private users would benefit most, with cuts of around 9% below inflation. But the average residential user, with a bill of around £46 a quarter, would pay more, even though Oftel's chairman, Sir Brian Carlsberg, said he particularly wanted them to pay less.
The ruling by telecom regulators doesn't threaten the status of BT as Britain's most profitable company. It's expected to shave less than 2% from its colossal profits. Today, the man employed to make sure those profits aren't earned at the expense of domestic consumers announced he'd tightened the regulation of a market where there's no effective competition.
Regulation has really to take the place of competition and put the kind of tough test on BT in the interests of residential customers that competition otherwise might.
But whatever Oftel's good intentions, domestic phone bills will keep on rising despite today's reforms. That's because, once again, the principal advantages will go to the business customer. They'll see charges changed by inflation minus 9%, a real cut. The best domestic users can hope for is an average of 3% less than the current rate of inflation. And because prices are generally rising at above 4%, that actually means an increase of £2 a year for the average user.
Many residential subscribers will not actually see their bills cut as from one year to the next. Meanwhile, a number of residential users, particularly people who make a lot of local phone calls, may actually find their bills going up quite a lot.
There's some good news for consumers in today's reforms. Maximum connection charges are being reduced by more than £50. Customers will be able to pay for telephone connections by instalment, and charges for the smallest users will fall. But line rentals will be allowed to rise by inflation plus 2%, and the price of most domestic calls will also be allowed to go up.
I believe that the consumer is getting a raw deal if these changes go ahead in this way. There should be price cuts now, and the rental charges should be falling.
BT has about a fortnight to respond to Oftel's recommendations, but they're not being given much chance to complain. The regulator has warned that if BT turns down his proposals, he'll refer the company to the Monopolies and Mergers Commission.
Libya has given Britain details of the former links between Colonel Gaddafi's regime and the IRA at a 2-hour meeting in Geneva. The talks were arranged after the United Nations imposed sanctions against Libya 2 months ago for refusing to hand over 2 men suspected of carrying out the Lockerbie bombing.
The Libyans, represented by their ambassador in Tunisia, Abdul Ati al-Obeidi, have been asked by Britain to supply answers to several questions about their links with the IRA and supplies of arms and explosives. The UN, who hosted the meeting, had also called on Libya to contribute to the elimination of international terrorism. The Libyan ambassador emerged after 2 hours.
What was the atmosphere?
Very friendly. Did you give a document?
Did you hand over any documents?
We exchange information.
But verbal information? Oral? Only verbal.
Verbal.
Neither the Libyan diplomat nor the British chargé d'affaires in Geneva, Edward Chaplin, would go into specifics, whether Lockerbie had been discussed, for example. Mr. Chaplin merely said that he'd received information and would be sending it to London, where it would be studied. British security sources are not expecting major revelations. They came 5 years ago with the interception of the freighter Exund off the French coast. Ground-to-air missiles, 2 tons of Semtex, thousands of guns and rounds of ammunition were seized. But by then, the IRA's Libyan connection had already supplied them with enough material to step up a campaign of terrorism in Northern Ireland, England and continental Europe. Some of it has been recovered. The Irish police found a huge cache of weapons in County Cork last month, but most is still thought to be at the terrorists' disposal. Every day, security forces on both sides of the Irish Sea are having to deal with the consequences of Colonel Gaddafi's generosity to the IRA.
The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Norman Lamont, has said he's immensely encouraged by talks about the future of the European Community's budget. At today's meeting in Luxembourg, it's understood that a majority of European finance ministers said they were against any increase in community spending. It's being seen as a blow for the Commission President Jacques Delors, who wants to increase the community's budget by 30% over the next 5 years.
Luxembourg is among the most pro-federalist of all the community countries, but it's here that signs are emerging that the Danish no vote is having repercussions. The European Commission President arrived here to argue the case for a 30% increase in the EC budget, Jacques Delors believing it's necessary to fulfill the community's enhanced role. But the Chancellor of the Exchequer came here determined to fight the rise, Norman Lamont saying it's more than people are prepared to pay. A majority of his colleagues supported him for the first time, no doubt worried that such a large budget rise would only fuel the EC's unpopularity.
We cannot allow expenditure at the European level to be miles above that which we would tolerate at home. If it can't be afforded at home, it simply can't be afforded through the European community.
At the meeting, the lessons from Denmark had obviously been learned. Germany's minister said his country couldn't keep increasing its contributions to the community. Taxpayers wouldn't stand for it and would turn against Brussels. This rebellion will complicate attempts to keep the Maastricht Treaty alive. Poorer countries had wanted a large budget increase to compensate them for the costs of implementing the treaty's contents. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Luxembourg.
The government said today that it was considering a number of ways of moving forward after the no vote in the Danish referendum. But opposition to the Maastricht Treaty is growing at Westminster. Conservative rebels claim their numbers have doubled since they last voted on Maastricht, and the Labour Party made it clear it would not support the treaty unless it included the social chapter.
While the Prime Minister's away, MPs play, and not just hot licks on the trumpet for charity. The government's policy on Maastricht is now seriously stalled at Westminster, with Cabinet and other ministers hoping the Danish referendum will give them a chance to back off from parts of a treaty they've never really liked. They'll get no help from Labour.
There are many of us on both sides of the House, long-standing enthusiasts for European unity, who will only support progress of a bill which is clear, which is honest, which is comprehensive, and which includes those parts of the treaties most of benefit to the British people, and that specifically includes the social chapter.
Tony Newton stuck to John Major's policy of wait and see.
That is a sensible policy, and for the right honourable gentleman to pretend that there is some simple, neat, immediate answer is absurd.
The Foreign Office Minister Douglas Hogg created a stir when he stood in for Douglas Hurd at Thursday's Cabinet. Tory doubters claim he dissociated himself from the view that Maastricht must be ratified and say this shows how much scepticism now exists within the government itself. The Prime Minister's office denies that Mr Hogg contradicted the Foreign Secretary. Pro-Europeans cling to ratification.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want the treaty to unravel, because I think anything it unravelled to would be worse for Britain than the current arrangements. And therefore I would like to see us proceed on the basis of Maastricht, while trying to keep the Danes involved.
But others see the opportunity for changes.
You've got to amend that treaty or get agreement among the heads of government in the community to amendments to the treaty, which will make it acceptable to the Danish people. And in the process, I hope it will be acceptable to us.
What we've seen since the Danish referendum is that a large number of Tory MPs, whose doubts were perhaps hidden for electoral purposes before the general election, are now saying that the Danish referendum creates a new situation, and they're coming forward and airing their views against the federalist nature of the Maastricht Treaty.
Doubting ministers are pleased that John Major is maintaining a light rein, encouraging everybody to have a say. But the inevitable delay in European diplomacy is reviving all the pre-Maastricht doubts, perhaps now among a majority of Conservatives. Some months ahead lies the trickiest political decision that this Prime Minister has so far had to make.
The Queen has described Britain as a committed and energetic partner in the European community. At a state banquet in Paris tonight, she also called on the EC to heal the wounds caused by years of communism in a once divided Europe. She said liberty had a high price if it meant reawakening ethnic conflicts, pitting town against town and neighbour against neighbour. Stephen Jessel reports from Paris.
From the start of this visit, it's been clear that part of its purpose is to show that Britain sees its future at the heart of Europe. Tonight, in a major speech, the Queen returned to the theme. She recalled the years of hesitation and disagreement before Britain joined the European community.
Plus de 20 ans sont passés, et aujourd'hui que le Royaume-Uni est au sein de la communauté, un partenaire dynamique et engagé.
The United Kingdom was now a committed and energetic partner in Europe, and she told her audience the community's achievements should not be underrated, even if sometimes the arguments before agreements got more attention than the agreements themselves. In a world where instability, strife and uncertainty were widespread, she said, the community was admired for its peace and progress. Earlier, the Queen had driven up the Champs-Élysées, escorted by the Republican Guard and accompanied by President Mitterrand. He is spending much of the next few days in the Queen's company. The President has political problems. To be seen acting as host to a monarch who is enormously popular with the French will do him no harm with the voters. He's eager, too, to show off the great new developments in Paris, like the Park and Science Museum at La Villette in the northeast of the city. As Britain prepares to take over the presidency of the European Community, the Queen, who appears relaxed and to be enjoying her visit, is underlining the message she gave recently to the European Parliament in Strasbourg and will repeat when she goes to Germany in the autumn, that Britain is in Europe as a full and wholehearted partner. The hope is that the royal family's problems back home won't overshadow that message. Stephen Jessel, BBC News, Paris.
Some newspapers have been defending their coverage of the Prince and Princess of Wales' marriage following yesterday's censure by the Press Complaints Commission. The Daily Express said the press had merely been doing its job in a free and open society. In the House of Commons, the Conservative MP Patrick Cormack said the Prince and Princess were being pursued by a pack of greedy voyeurs on the make.
Newspaper photographers and television crews were out early this morning, scrambling, as in previous years, for the best positions from which to cover Prince Harry's school sports and plundering local hire shops for scaffolding and ladders. Parents watched the sports from a grandstand, watched in turn by the nation's media, until a torrential thunderstorm put an end to the races. But it'll take more than this to dampen the media's enthusiasm for royal stories. Their presence in force today suggests there'll be no let-up in the royal coverage, something the Princess of Wales must have known as she prepared to leave after the rain had stopped. Prince Charles, meanwhile, had travelled to Copenhagen for a celebration by the Danish royal family. He left behind him a divided press. 3 of today's tabloids, including the Daily Star, whose editor is a member of the Press Complaints Commission, were unrepentant about their coverage of the royal marriage. Quite simply, they said, the reports are true. But the Daily Express was one of several papers which apparently did change their tone in response to yesterday's criticisms by the Commission, which called recent royal reporting odious and intrusive. Even so, the Express accused the Commission of trying to muzzle newspapers and continues the theme in tomorrow's paper. The Express's diarist says the Princess must accept that she's in the public eye.
I think she's under enormous stress, but this, unfortunately, is part of the price of being a member of the royal family. That the royal family is an institution. It's an institution made up of people, and as we've discovered over the last few days, they are fallible. To expect this to be brushed under the red carpet, I think, is really extending things beyond what is acceptable.
But at Prime Minister's question time, one MP made clear he doesn't think the media are performing a public service.
That there are few less agreeable sights than that of a pack of greedy voyeurs on the make. And will he please convey the good wishes of the House to the Prince and Princess of Wales?
Standing in for the Prime Minister, the leader of the House, Tony Newton, seemed to let a hint of menace creep in as he referred to the Heritage Secretary David Mellor's review of the press and privacy.
My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for National Heritage, will be taking into account the views of the Press Complaints Commission in his forthcoming review of press self-regulation, which is due to start in July. And I think he will have the support of the whole House in doing precisely that.
Though several newspapers have chosen to ignore its warnings, the Press Complaints Commission's unlikely to back down from its confrontation with the tabloids. It'll be monitoring next Sunday's coverage carefully, and if that's thought too intrusive, it may appeal directly to the newspaper proprietors. It's fear that the isolated calls among backbench MPs for a new privacy law could become a chorus.
The President of the Board of Trade, Michael Heseltine, has warned the privatised electricity generators to take into account social and economic factors as they negotiate new contracts with British Coal. Speaking at the annual conference of the Union of Democratic Mine Workers, he said he expected the generators to strike a hard bargain when buying coal, but they should also consider the future of the mining communities and that of coal as a natural resource.
Ministers have called this the ultimate privatisation, but coal is a declining industry, and it's not going to be that easy to sell. The miners know that their main customers, the electricity generators National Power and Power Gen, want to build more gas-burning stations. Their pits could be run down to as few as a dozen. Today in Weymouth, Mr Heseltine warned the generators to think hard before they sign new contracts, ditching coal in favour of gas.
Remember, when you are negotiating these contracts, that you are determining the future availability of a national resource for which you will have a longer-term need. Remember also that you are talking about communities of men and women whose lives will be affected by your decisions.
But in London, Powergen's chairman responded by saying he has to do what's best for his business.
We're conscious of the sentiment, and as citizens we wouldn't dissent at all from that. But practically speaking, we're bound for our customers seeking price reductions, which we want to help contribute toward, recognizing we're only 50% of that cost, and indeed our own shareholders, that we are, as you say, bound to serve other interests.
The government wants workers to buy shares in the privatised industry. The UDM hopes to lead an employee buyout. There's no chance of privatising British coal unless it has contracts with the generators lasting at least 5 years. The generators are negotiating hard, but Mr Heseltine's told them today to conclude the negotiations quickly and not to make a deal which hammers British coal into the ground.
At the Earth Summit in Rio, all 12 European community countries have said they will sign the two main treaties on countering global warming and saving endangered plants and animals. The United States is now likely to be the only industrialized country that will refuse to sign the Biodiversity Convention aimed at slowing the destruction of species. Britain, too, had expressed reservations, but these have now been overcome.
The main difficulty was finance. We wanted to make sure that we weren't signing a blank check. We've looked at the provisions very carefully. We're satisfied that we're not signing a blank check, and so we're able to sign the convention.
And as talks continue in Rio on how to stop the world's rainforests disappearing, a new report says that the rate of deforestation is increasing by about 50% over the last decade. Roughly a third of the world's rainforest lies in the Brazilian state of Amazonas, where the governor is operating a policy of jobs and development above all else. For the poor, he says, the Earth Summit is irrelevant.
In Manaus, state capital of Amazonas, they turn trees from the tropical forests into timber for export. The deforestation upstream is as high as 20% a year. But this is part of a program of industrial expansion that's turned Manaus into a boom city. Multinational manufacturing companies proliferate. Everywhere, foreign firms are setting up shop. But there are precious few jobs for the thousands who've migrated here in search of prosperity. And yet, their hopes and their votes are raised by Gilberto Mestrino. A rich, powerful politician now in his third term of office as state governor. His promise of a better life, given the freedom to exploit the region's resources, is the key to his popularity. An avowed enemy of environmentalists, he says they care more for the forests than for people. He's also accused of aligning himself with the interests of those who log and mine in the forests.
I'm only interested in providing work and bettering the life of the people who live in Amazonas. I have personally no connection with any private companies, economic groups, cartels, or firms, whether national or international.
Mestrino says deforestation isn't the problem the United Nations say it is. But the man who was recently sacked as Brazil's environment minister for his reformist views vigorously disagrees.
What's happening in Amazonia is a war of rape. It is the industrial south of the country, allied to multinational corporations and others, and powerful people all over Brazil and the world, who are raping the resources of the region.
Mestrino plans to build a controversial theme park in this part of Brazil. The man who says everyone has the right to use a chainsaw remains an undimmed power in the state of Amazonas. Ian Breach, BBC News, Manaus, northern Brazil.
John Major has arrived in Colombia tonight on his way to the Rio Summit. It's the first official visit to Latin America by a British Prime Minister. Mr. Major will discuss trade with Colombian ministers, visit British oil exploration firms, and meet police who are involved in the war against drugs.
A
police helicopter goes drug spotting over the vast empty spaces in the interior of Colombia. The police probably discover only 1,000th of the total crop, especially now that the drugs trade is switching from cocaine to something which earns 20 times as much, heroin poppies. With British and American help, the police are getting better at finding and destroying the poppy fields. But it's been Colombia's bad luck to suffer from some of the worst problems in the third world: corruption, repression, disastrous commodity prices, and terrorism. This is a river of oil, literally. One of Colombia's terrorist groups, the ELN, specializes in blowing up oil pipelines, 3 in the past fortnight. The oil from this one ran into the nearby river and caused an ecological disaster. The ELN has competition. These are the revolutionary armed forces of Colombia, going through their paces for the television cameras. With 6,000 active fighters of all ages, they're the biggest and most successful guerrilla movement here. Carcasa is a pleasant market town, only an hour's drive from the capital. Yet in the mountains overlooking it, 2 different guerrilla groups are operating. An army post is here to defend the town. Unlike other Latin American countries, Colombia has always skimped on its army, and it shows. The major in charge has better communications nowadays, and although most British and American aid goes to the police to help the drugs war, a lot has come to the army in the past and was used to fight guerrillas. His men went through the motions for us, striking up into the hills around the town. There's been no sign of the guerrillas this close to the town, and the exercise, for that's what it is coming to an end. But in the hills around us, the guerrilla war is continuing, with the guerrillas unable to win it, and yet unprepared to give up. On a barren mountainside outside Bogota, a group of country people has gathered faithfully in a makeshift church. They've always been the main victims: the guerrillas, the army, the worsening economy. When they pray for peace, they really mean it. John Simpson, BBC News, Bogota.
British football fans are starting to arrive in Scandinavia for the European Championship finals, which open tomorrow. Scotland supporters are making their way to Gothenburg for Friday's match against Holland. England's first fixtures are in Malmö. But the high cost of living in Sweden means that around 3,000 of England's fans will be staying in the Danish capital, Copenhagen. Our sports correspondent Rob Bonnet reports.
Malmö may be the venue for England's first 2 matches, but it's 10 miles across the water from their fans' home from home, Copenhagen in Denmark. The small trickle here so far is expected to swell to between 3,000 and 4,000 by Thursday. They're here for one simple reason.
Copenhagen because of cost. Malmö is going to be really expensive. This you can get for £4 a night. The beer's cheap. They've got plenty of duty frees. It's going to be okay.
Copenhagen will be the European Championship's international bottleneck. English, French, German, Dutch, and of course the Danes themselves will all pass through here on their way to Sweden. They'll go by one of 3 ferry routes, but on Thursday, after England's match against Denmark, it's the coming back that's causing concern. Danes and English will converge in numbers on the boats. There'll be an attempt at segregation, but given past bad behaviour by English fans on ferries, there's substantial concern.
We could be talking 4,000 or 5,000 people trying to get back. There's currently a lot of negotiations going on. It may be a lot of England fans who just have to accept they're going to have to spend the night in Malmö rather than come back to Copenhagen.
And if they do, the emphatically positive Malmö authorities will encourage them to drink, not to get drunk, in this beer tent, where weak beer will cost about £1 a pint. The stronger stuff can cost 4 times as much.
We hope for this good weather and we hope for a good time. But we don't expect people to get drunk on match days.
48 hours from kick-off, and Malmö remains quiet, civilised. It won't stay quiet, of course, but can England's fans continue to justify their improving image? Rob Bonnet, BBC News at the European Championship finals.
2 boys from West Belfast have escaped unharmed after unwittingly carrying home a £5 Semtex bomb they found discarded in a street. The device, which was hidden in a box, was safely defused by army experts.
2 pals playing football in the back garden, but Damien Clark and Robert Cochran are lucky to be alive. They found a parcel on a road near a wooded area not far from their homes. They picked it up, even though some other boys told them it was a bomb. The word Semtex was written on the side, and they decided to take it home. One of them even kicked it.
I came over and lifted it, and I brought it down, started to play with it, and my brother Ian came over and said, "Now, see what's that?" And I said, "Don't know what it is." And he said, and he seen the label on it, and he said, "That's a bomb." And me and him brought it up to my daddy, said, "Daddy, we have a bomb here."
The boys put the package on a wall, and it was a bomb containing 5 pounds of Semtex.
My neighbours have all called in this morning, but the reality of what had happened last night has sunk in, and they just realised how close to danger. Not only my son and Robert here, most of the children in this cul-de-sac are very lucky.
When what might have happened dawned on them, they were frightened. But like any young boys, they were scared of other things too.
Me and Damien thought we were going to jail. Damien was crying because the police wanted me and Damien on the phone and to bring him to the place where the bomb was.
Damien and Robert won't be going to jail, but their experience underlines that in Northern Ireland, playtime can be highly dangerous.
Tonight's main news again. BT says new proposals to reduce telephone charges are harsher than expected. There'll be more on that on Newsnight on BBC 2 at 10:30. That's the 9 o'clock news tonight. Good night.
Britain is 3 years after it began.
You're good, aren't you?
Satellite pay TV is making its mark.
Yes!
February 5th, 1989, the dawn of television's new age.
Sky Television became Britain's first new age broadcaster, beaming 4 channels by satellite, initially for free. A rival, BSB, added 4 more channels in 1990. Crippling costs forced them to merge. Now the combined British Sky Broadcasting offers 6 satellite channels. 3 remain free, the 24-hour Sky News, Sky Sport and General Entertainment Sky One. But the movies cost $27 a month for 1 channel, almost $40 for 2. A comedy channel comes as a free bonus. Britons didn't rush to sign up. An estimated 1 in 6 homes has installed the satellite equipment, cost $575 to tune in. But sport is forcing viewers' hands. Sales skyrocketed when Sky bought exclusive rights to last summer's World Cup cricket. If you didn't have a dish, you didn't see it. Sky predicts they'll be in half Britain's homes in 5 years.
Once the consumer gets a taste of what we're offering, there's almost an immediate acceptance of it.
Exclusive rights to the nation's soccer should ensure it. First, it will be free, but eventually fans will pay to watch. How they'll react is as yet unknown. So satellite pay television remains a relatively new concept here. It's a far different story, though, in America. So satellite pay television remains a relatively new concept here. It's a far different story, though, in America.
Okay, everybody, shape up and pay attention.
Britain is 3 years after it began.
You're good, aren't you?
Satellite pay TV is making its mark.
Yes!
February 5th, 1989, the dawn of television's new age.
Sky Television became Britain's first new age broadcaster, beaming 4 channels by satellite, initially for free. Now, British Sky Broadcasting is satelliting 6 channels across Europe. 3 remain free, the 24-hour Sky News, Sky Sport and general entertainment Sky One. But the movies cost $27 a month for one channel, almost $40 for two. A comedy channel comes as a free bonus. Sky predicts they'll be in half Britain's homes in 5 years.
Once the consumer gets a taste of what we're offering, there's almost an immediate acceptance of it.
So satellite pay television remains a relatively new concept here. It's a far different story, though, in America. So satellite pay television remains a relatively new concept here. It's a far different story, though, in America.
The sports day was supposed to be a private affair, but photographers and camera crews used every vantage point to home in on the princess and her sons. For most of the day, Diana sat alone, deep in thought. Prince Harry ignored the media, so intent on his obstacle race that he initially forgot the rules. The weather prevented further photo chances, the sports day was cancelled, and Diana left early to avoid more unwelcome media interest. Prince Charles didn't attend. He went to Denmark instead, a guest at Queen Margret's 25th wedding anniversary celebrations. His departure is certain to fuel speculation about the state of his own marriage, although MPs again have voiced their disappointment at the royal coverage.
There are few less agreeable sights than that of a pack of greedy wires on the make. And will he please convey the good wishes of the House to the Prince and Princess of Wales?
But newspaper editors and royal reporters have reacted angrily to suggestions a new privacy law may be enacted if the stories aren't toned down.
The royal family is an institution, but it's an institution made up of people, and as we've discovered over the last few days, they are fallible. To expect this to be brushed under the red carpet, I think, is really extending things beyond what is acceptable.
Today, the tabloids were again full of the suicide allegations, which originated in Andrew Morton's new book, Diana, Her True Story, due for release later this month. Despite the newspaper editors' denials, there's one exclusive store in London that won't be stocking the book. Harrods has decided that kind of publication isn't needed on its shelves. Harrods enjoys the prestige of several royal warrants, including that of the Prince of Wales, but says that's not the reason it decided against stocking the book.
It's not a question of money, it's not a question of turnover, it's merely a question of taste.
In what way?
We think that the book is distasteful and we're quite happy not to sell it.
The Queen and Prince Philip have escaped the royal row for the next few days. They are on an official tour of France. Although the Queen has visited the country privately many times, this is her first state visit in 20 years. But as she smiled at the crowds, it's doubtful her mind was ever far away from the troubles of her eldest son. In London, Steve Kerry, 11 a.m. In London, Steve Kerry, 7 Nightly News. In London, Steve Kerry, 3 National News.
Half a league, half a league, half a league's but to do and die. Into the valley of death. Boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of they that had fought so well, came through the jaws of when can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made, all the world wondered. Half a league, half a league, half a league's but to do and die. Into the valley of death. Boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of they that had fought so well, came through the jaws of when can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made.
This time, when the British charge, the result will be different. The only place you'll see the Lions Rugby Tour Down Under is on Sky Sports.
Many of the original owners are back in their castles, thanks to historic restitution laws. Famous Mielnik Castle near Prague has been claimed by Manhattan lawyer George Lobkowitz.
My father actually left this place, this castle, in 1948, and left the country actually really in 24 hours and dropped the keys and took a bag and left. So it's quite an emotion to come back, and I've been growing up in the West and came back 2 years ago with my father. And it's amazing to stand again in our family museum or gallery, which has been here for over 150 years.
The castle and its treasures, now dusted off from communist storage, have 1,000 years of tales. It was home for a time for Bohemia's most famous ruler, the man in the Christmas carol, Good King Wenceslas.
As you see, that's Saint Wenceslas, the father of Bohemia, who's pressing some wine in a half barrel, and it's very, very astonishing picture.
Just as astonishing, 10th century wine cellars, great vats which have stocked wine first produced by Charles IV, the Holy Roman Emperor. At the birth of each Lobkowitz child, a special vat was filled to be opened at their wedding.
The name of the wine, the brand of the name of the wine is called Ludmilla, and Ludmilla was the grandmother of Saint Wenceslas, and she used to live in this castle. It was the castles of the queens of Bohemia, so it has a big tradition in this country, the Ludmilla, which maybe we should try.
Yeah, well, it's thirsty talking about it.
The shape of the bottle is quite unique.
To your health.
One says na zdraví.
Na zdraví.
But most takeovers haven't been as sweet. The Lobkowitz clan lays claim to 17 castles, of which George is to get 4. Most were let run to ruin by the communists. Pigs were bred in one. This was used as an agricultural school.
Those rooms are the famous stone rooms, as they're called. And as you see with Rococo paintings on the wall. And you can also see the state of destruction those rooms have been going through.
Restoration will cost millions, but George isn't daunted.
As all families here, we've been thinking in centuries.